Chapter 369. When the sun rose once again, all the guild members gathered in front of the entrance of Fairy Tale, which had been battered black and blue by a thick iron rod. Looking at the miserable state of the guild in front of them, they couldn't help but avert their gazes. At the front of all the guild members, Makarov closed his eyes tightly. His expression was calm, but the hand that was holding the cane was trembling at an imperceptible frequency. It was obvious that his heart was extremely unsettled. Bang! In the crowd, Nazi clenched his fist and slammed it on the ground, creating a fist-sized hole in the ground. His face was filled with uncontrollable rage. Phantom Lord! Nazi's roar reverberated in the air, causing many people to be enraged as they clenched their fists tightly. Perhaps many people were like Naz, roaring the name of the guild that hoped to be cut into pieces thousands of times in their hearts. This is too much. Lys-Anna hugged Mira tightly as if she didn't want to see the miserable state of the guild. She buried her head in Myra's arms. How can they do this? Mira hugged Lys-Anna back and gently patted her head. Her usually gentle face was also filled with sadness. It was obvious that she felt extremely uncomfortable in her heart. Even Alusha, Lucy, Gray, Elfman, Karna, Lebby, Hubby, and the others lowered their heads in silence. They couldn't bear to see the miserable state of the guild and kept silent. Fairy Tale and Phantom Lord didn't have a good relationship to begin with. This was something that even outsiders knew. This was because in the current Fiori Kingdom, if one were to say which guild was the strongest, people would either say Fairy Tale or Phantom Lord. The two had always been competing for the position of the strongest guild, and neither was willing to submit to the other. Of course, Fairy Tale was simply unwilling to submit to Phantom Lord. However, Phantom Lord was extremely hostile towards Fairy Tale. Compared to Fairy Tale, Phantom Lord not only had a longer history, but also had many branches under his command. It could be said that they had the most members of any guild in the Fiori Kingdom. In Phantom Lord's view, Fairy Tale was not only a new guild, but also had a small number of members. They didn't even have a branch, so how could they compete with them for the position of the strongest guild? But it was undeniable that although Fairy Tale had a small number of members, they had a lot of strong players. Kildas, Laxus, Mishgang, Alusha. Any one of these people had the ability to destroy all of the Phantom Lord's branches. Under such circumstances, who would dare to say that Fairy Tale was weak? It was also because of this that Phantom Lord, who was jealous of Fairy Tale for having too many strong players, was so hostile towards Fairy Tale. In addition, Makarov had once fought with Phantom Lord's guild leader and won. Since then, Phantom Lord had been looking for trouble with Fairy Tale. This could be seen from the fact that Noah had been attacked by Phantom Lord when he was young. However, no one would have thought that the Phantom Lord would directly attack the Fairy Tale's guild building. It must be known that the council had explicitly stated that guilds were not allowed to fight privately. Otherwise, the punishment would be light and the guild could even be disbanded. As such, who would have thought that the Phantom Lord would still dare to attack the guild? Even Noah could only watch helplessly as his guild was destroyed because he had not thought of it, right? Sigh. After an unknown amount of time, Makarov finally sighed and his tone returned to normal. Immediately get someone to repair the guild. Before the guild is repaired, everyone should clear out the underground warehouse and use it as a temporary workplace. What about Phantom Lord? The hot-headedness shouted without hesitation. Let's go and wipe them out. Naz. Makarov's expression did not change and he still sighed. This matter ends here. None of you are allowed to privately seek revenge. What? This time, not only Naz but everyone else in the guild exclaimed. Guild Master. Alusha stepped forward and looked straight at Makarov. You mean we're just going to let it go? Impossible. Without waiting for Makarov to answer, Naz roared. If I don't send those fellows flying, I will definitely not give up. Naz. Hubby called out with some worry. Calm down, Naz. Lucy also spoke quickly, but there was also a trace of sadness in her eyes. This is the guild master's order. I don't care. Naz, whose heart was filled with anger, said bluntly. If none of you are going, then I'll go. Calm down. Stinky fire. Gray couldn't stand it anymore. Do you know what you're talking about? Do you want to violate the guild master's decision? Naz seemed to want to say something, but he was stopped by Elusha. After taking a deep breath, Elusha regained her composure. If this is the guild master's decision, then we all have to abide by it. Naz, you should understand what I will do if you mess around, right? The veins on Naz's head bulged, and in the end, he could only growl sullenly. Damn it! Under Naz's unwilling growl, many people closed their eyes sadly. Who would be willing? But Makarov's decision was right. After all, private conflicts between guilds were prohibited. In order to protect the guild, they could only swallow this anger into their stomachs. Of course, it was also because there was no one in the destroyed guild. If someone was injured, Makarov would never tolerate it. If the building was destroyed, then Makarov's decision was destined to be only one: endure. However, even if Makarov could endure it, it didn't mean that others could. Noah, who had been quietly watching this scene from the corner, suddenly turned around and walked in another direction. Brother Noah? Lise Anna, who was closest to Noah, noticed this and quickly called out, "Where are you going?" With one sentence, everyone's gaze was attracted to Noah. Noah! Mira, who felt a bad premonition, also spoke. Don't be impulsive. Noah! At the front of the crowd, Makarov shouted without turning his head. Come back here. Noah stopped in his tracks and turned around. His face was as calm as the calm before the storm. It was a face that struck fear in others. I'm sorry, Grandpa. To you, this is just a guild being destroyed, but to me, it's my home being destroyed. Since that's the case, it's normal for me to go and ask for some compensation. Besides, if I go alone, it won't be considered a conflict between guilds, right? What do you mean? Makarov was startled and turned around abruptly. You want to challenge a guild by yourself? Hearing this, Noah laughed. His laugh was unusually cold. Noah turned around and left only one sentence. One person is enough? With that, Noah strode forward and disappeared at the end of the street. Seeing this, Makarov sighed again. Mira and Lise Anna looked at each other and placed their hands in front of their chest, as if praying for Noah's safety. Chapter 370. This was a hall located at the top of a magnificent building. At the very front of the hall, there was a throne-like seat. A middle-aged man wearing a sorcerer's hat and looking very similar to a sorcerer was sitting on it, looking down. His sinister face was slightly gloomy at this moment, and he did not look very good. And in the hall, 5 people were standing side by side. No, it should be said that there were 4 people standing side by side, and the remaining person was kneeling on the ground with one knee. His whole body was in tatters, and one of his hands seemed to have been burned. His whole body was charred black and blood was dripping out. It seemed that his injury was not light. If there was someone in the know here, they would definitely be able to recognize the identity of the people here. Sitting on the throne-like seat was the president of Phantom Lord, like Makarov, who also had the title of one of the 10 Saint Archmages, Joseph Bala. And standing side by side in the hall were the 4 S-rank Archmages of Phantom Lord, who had the title of 4 Elements Aliyah, Julian, Saul, and Bun Bun Ball. As for the one kneeling on the ground with his hand still dripping with blood, it was the existence of Phantom Lord, who was known as the strongest Archmage Gadjalu Latefox. However, this existence known as Phantom Lord, who was known as the strongest Archmage, didn't seem to be in a very good condition. This was also the main reason why the guild leader of the Phantom Lord, Joseph, had such an ugly expression on his face. You said that after you attacked Fairy Tale last night, someone attacked you? That's right. Gadjalu's expression was also unsightly. His eyes were filled with savagery, and there was even a wild rage surging in them. At that time I had already started to withdraw, but I was suddenly attacked. If I hadn't noticed the strange smell in the air and dodged in advance, now I wouldn't be as simple as just being injured. You're saying that not only does someone in Fairy Tale have the ability to injure you like this, but they can also attack you without you noticing, Joseph said in a low voice. Who is it? Laxus? Mishgang? Or that fairy queen Elusha? It shouldn't be that Kildas who travels all year round, right? Could it be Makarov himself? Joseph could only think of these people. After all, Joseph knew of Gadjalu's strength. In Fairy Tale, there was absolutely no one else who could silently injure Gadjalu like this with a single attack. Joseph was very confident of this point. After all, as a guild that had always been hostile towards him, any information regarding Fairy Tale was of utmost importance to Joseph. Therefore, Joseph was confident that unless it wasn't someone from Fairy Tale, only the existences he could think of could hurt Gadjaloo in one strike. Unfortunately, Joseph made a mistake this time. After 4 years of hard work and 2 years of traveling, Noah had long faded out of the sight of the people who paid attention to Fairy Tale. His fame was lower than Naz, Gray, and the others, so it was naturally impossible for him to enter Joseph's eyes. Sad, really sad. Aaliyah's voice was sobbing as if she could cry at any time. I really feel sad for Mr. Gadjaloo. Julian doesn't think it's President Makarov. Julian, who was holding an umbrella, said with a somewhat melancholy expression. If that person personally attacked, Mr. Gadjaloo would definitely be able to detect it. That's true. Bunnyball, who had a sword at his waist like a warrior, said in a deep voice. I heard that Makarov's magic is the type that makes a lot of noise. If he attacked Mr. Gadjaloo would definitely be able to detect it. No. Thor, who was dressed like a gentleman, said with a smile while twisting his body like a clown. Then it's Lax's Mishgang or Ilusha, right? Is that right? Hearing the words of the 4 elements, Gadjaloo raised his eyes filled with ruthlessness and coldly looked around. Shut up. Hearing that, whether it was Aaliyah, Julian, Bunnyball, or Thor, they all obediently shut their mouths. Obviously, even the 4 elements were afraid of Gadjaloo. You're so long-winded. If I knew who it was, would I still need to stand with you with such an ugly appearance? Gadjaloo spat out a mouthful of saliva and said bitterly, Remember, don't let me know who you are. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone present sensed it. The ground just now shook. Bang! Immediately after, an explosive sound reverberated from below and entered the ears of everyone present. Joseph narrowed his eyes and smiled. Could it be that Fairy Tale is here? Oh! Gadjaloo giggled, and that smile was extremely cruel. I thought it would take more effort to lure them here, but I didn't expect it to be so easy. Sure enough, Fairy Tale is only at this level. Hearing Gadjaloo's words, the 4 magic shooters of the 4 elements looked at each other. At this point it was easy to guess what was going on. It felt like the Phantom Lord's attack on Fairy Tale was all planned out, and it wasn't because of a momentary conflict. If Makarov really attacked, it would save me a lot of trouble. Joseph smiled gloomily. But before that, let's make sure. Saying this, Joseph stood up and looked down at the 5 people below. I'll leave this place to you guys. If it's just the people from Fairy Tale, then cripple them all. Just remember not to kill them. If Makarov is also here, then we'll proceed according to plan. Yes. Aaliyah, Julian, Bunnyball, and Saul all responded at the same time. As for Mr. Gadjaloo, Joseph frowned. Since you're all injured, why don't you take a rest? Injured? Gadjaloo laughed, and his laughter was unusually irritable. This kind of injury, as long as I'm full, I'll be able to recover in no time. Is that so? Joseph smiled with satisfaction. Then I'll leave it to you. Leaving this sentence, Joseph's figure turned into a black shadow and disappeared into the air. Compared to Fairy Tale, the building of Phantom Lord was a bit gloomy. At first glance, one could tell that it wasn't a place suitable for people with cheerful personalities. Here, a bunch of delinquent youths and hoodlums were gathered together, eating and drinking to their heart's content. From time to time, they would let out angry curses, causing the entire Phantom Lord to be in an uproar. However, the noise here was different from that in Fairy Tale. If the noises of Fairy Tale belonged to the daily quarrel between friends, then the noises of Phantom Lord were the kind of chaos where a group of hooligans gathered together, making people flinch at the sight of it. Just as the magic shooters in Phantom Lord were making noise, suddenly, the ground shook slightly. Bang dash! In the next second, the door of the Phantom Lord exploded, turning into fragments that shot out in all directions like bullets. What's wrong? What's going on? The magic shooters in Phantom Lord stood up in fright and looked toward the door. There a figure slowly appeared. Chapter 371. Who? Without any hesitation, the magic shooters of the Phantom Lord all grabbed their weapons and stood up, looking fiercely in the direction of the door. As long as one was not a fool, they would definitely be able to guess what had happened in the first instance. Someone is here to pick a fight. Under the watchful gazes of the magic shooters, Noah passed through the smoke and flames caused by the explosion of the door and appeared in the eyes of all the magic shooters of the Phantom Lord. He raised his head and swept his torch-like eyes forward. The group of Phantom Lord magic shooters saw Noah appear at the door. At first, they were startled. Then they looked at each other and laughed out loud. What, so it's a little brat? Why is this little brat here? Could it be that he's lost? Kid, do you need us to take you to find your mother? Ahahaha. Without exception, all the sorcerers who belonged to the Phantom Lord chose to ridicule him at this moment. In the eyes of these magic shooters, a person like Noah who was not even 20 years old, even if he was a magic shooter, was just a little brat. Since he dared to come to the Phantom Lord to pick a fight, one could imagine what would happen to him later. Of course, the most important thing was not because Noah was relatively young, but because Noah was only one person. Otherwise, these magic shooters who knew their own worth would definitely not have the guts to laugh at someone who dared to come to the Phantom Lord to pick a fight. In the face of the mockery from the Phantom Lord's magic shooters, Noah's expression remained unchanged, but the look in his eyes became slightly disdainful, and there was also some indignation and anger in his eyes. Are all the magic shooters of Phantom Lord such magic shooters of Phantom Lord such magic shooters? Was the guild that had hidden so many small fries to cause trouble for Fairy Tail? They didn't even have a single person with good eyesight. How could these guys compete with Fairy Tail for the title of the strongest guild? And on what basis did he dare to make a move against Fairy Tail? Driven by this thought, Noah's face became colder and colder. He ignored the mockery of the Phantom Lord and spoke indifferently. Tell Joseph to get out here. With that one sentence, the mocking laughter that echoed throughout the entire Phantom Lord Guild came to an abrupt halt. A man walked out of the crowd and stood in front of all the Phantom Lord archmages. He seemed to be the most prestigious person among the archmages present. He represented the entire Phantom Lord and looked coldly at Noah. You little brat, you dare to call our president by his name? Don't even think about leaving here today. Hearing this, Noah was about to say something, but when he saw the speaker coming out of the crowd, he was slightly startled. Then a light flashed in his eyes. Noah knew this person. Although he had only met him once when he was young, Noah had a very deep impression of him. Because this person in front of him had left a hideous scar on Noah's hand that was enough to last a lifetime. It was Moglia who had led the Phantom Lord branch archmages to intercept Noah, Elusha, and Laxus during the Ritual Lake mission. He had attacked Noah's group and left a hideous scar on Noah's hand. After 7 years, the archmage who had seen the potential of Noah, Elusha, and Laxus and who had wanted to eradicate the future pillar of Fairy Tail by hook or by crook, had finally appeared in front of Noah once again. As soon as he saw Moglia's face, which was relatively older and colder than 7 years ago, Noah smiled. His smile was unusually excited. Oh, isn't this Mr. Moglia who was easily defeated by Laxus, who was also a little brat? Moglia's cold face suddenly stiffened, and then became ferocious. Who are you? How do you know about this? Speak. Moglia yelled at the top of his lungs. Back then, the matter of Laxus being able to resolve it so cleanly had always been a thick thorn in Moglia's heart. That was to be expected. Moglia was very conceited. When they first met, he had obviously looked down on Noah, Elusha, and Laxus's group. However, because of the commission, he had lost a lot of face. That was still nothing. The key was that under such circumstances, Moglia had led people to block Noah's group. In the end, not only had he been stimulated by the talent and potential of Noah and Elusha, but he had also been easily defeated by Laxus. This made the conceited Moglia go crazy countless times after the incident. However, what could Moglia do? As time passed, Laxus, who had easily defeated Moglia, became an S-rank magic shooter. His strength improved rapidly. Elusha also began to show her talent and received the title of Fairy Queen. Her reputation shook the entire Fiori kingdom. Compared to Elusha and Laxus, Moglia was already more than 40 years old 7 years ago. His potential had long been exhausted. In these 7 years, his strength could only be described as the speed of a turtle compared to Elusha and Laxus. Until now, He had not reached the level of an S-rank magic shooter. How would Maglia dare to seek revenge? He could only bear this grudge and swallow this resentment in his heart. However, after 7 years, this humiliation that almost made Maglia go crazy was once again mentioned. How could Maglia not fly into a rage? Mr. Maglia is really forgetful. Facing Maglia's rage, Noah only sneered. He raised his hand, rolled up his sleeves, and showed his bandaged hand to Maglia. Don't tell me you forgot that in order to protect Alusha, you left a scar on my hand. Alusha? Fairy Queen? Maglia was suddenly shocked, and then his eyes widened. So it's you. In this life, Maglia and Alusha only met once when they were young. In addition, Noah also mentioned Laxus and the matter of protecting Alusha. How could Maglia not think of Noah? One must know that in the past, Noah, who did not know magic, also fiercely punched Maglia's face. That humiliation was not one bit less than being cleanly dealt with by Laxus. Stinking brat. Looking at Noah's face full of ridicule, Maglia's hidden scar in his heart was finally completely opened, causing Maglia to madly roar. I'll kill you. After saying this, Maglia's entire body exploded with a burst of extremely violent and frightening lightning. His body turned into a bolt of lightning, and like a bolt of lightning, he rushed in the direction of Noah, and violently shot in front of Noah. Go to hell! In the midst of the angry roar, Maglia raised his fist, which was surrounded by lightning, against the hot air, and mercilessly swung it at Noah's head amidst the sharp sound of the air breaking. If this punch really hit, then even if it was a magic shooter with decent strength, his head would directly explode and he would die on the spot. Obviously, Maglia did not have the slightest intention of showing mercy. Once he made a move, it was a sure kill blow and he wanted to kill Noah. Unfortunately, Maglia was destined to live in tragedy for the rest of his life, starting from 7 years ago when he chose to surround Noah and his group. Hence, before Maglia could see the scene of Noah's head exploding from his punch, a hand suddenly appeared in front of him, passed through the layers of lightning on Maglia's body, and landed a punch on Maglia's chest. Bang! A violent impact with extremely terrifying power surged into Maglia's body. Poochie! Maglia only felt as if he was hit by a heavy hammer. His chest shook, his body trembled, and he directly spat out a mouthful of blood. Chapter 372. Crimson blood spurted out of Maglia's mouth and sprayed in the direction of Noah. Noah casually sidestepped and avoided the spray of blood. He twisted his body and suddenly lifted his leg. His thigh was like a long whip as it suddenly lashed out and heavily smashed into Maglia's chest before he could be sent flying. That position was exactly the same as the position where Noah had previously swung his fist. Bang! Along with a muffled sound, a kacha sound was heard from Maglia's chest. Wah! Blood spurted out of Maglia's mouth as if it was free of charge. Maglia himself was hit by Noah's meteor-like kick and suddenly fell to the ground, smashing it until it cracked slightly. Looking at this scene, the group of Phantom Lord magic shooters were all shocked and dumbfounded. Stepping on Maglia's chest and looking down at Maglia's face that was covered in blood, Noah's face was calm. I've repaid my debt to you. You. Maglia raised his hand with difficulty and pointed at Noah with a trembling hand. Other than disbelief, there was only disbelief on his face. Unlike those Phantom Lord magic shooters, Maglia knew that Noah was a fairy tale magic shooter. However, in the past 7 years, the reputation of the powerful magic shooters in fairy tale had long been known by everyone. Even the fire-annihilating dragon magic shooter, Naz, had made a name for himself. However, Noah had not made a name for himself in the past 7 years. When Laxus became an S-rank magic shooter and his strength advanced by leaps and bounds, the name Noah did not appear. When Alusha received the title Fairy Queen, and her reputation shook the Fiori Kingdom, the name Noah still did not appear. Later, when Demon Mirageni, Fire Dragon Naz, the enigmatic Mishgang, and even Grey and Elfman made a name for themselves, the name Noah did not appear at all. Only when people mentioned Makarov and Laxus's family did they make a name for themselves. Other than that, not to mention the Fiori Kingdom, even the people of Magnolia did not mention Noah. Over time, Maglia thought that he had misjudged Noah and thought that he was not a genius at all. In the beginning, he still wanted to find trouble with Noah, but later on, because there was no news of Noah, he threw it to the back of his mind. He did not expect that after 7 years, this person would appear in front of him once again. Just when he thought that he could still crush him with one hand, the result was that he was defeated in one move. At this moment, Mowgli only felt that his vision turned black. The humiliation that emerged from his heart was 1,000 times, 10,000 times heavier than before. Because this time, Mowgli was no longer dealt with cleanly by a little brat in the wilderness. Instead, he was dealt with in front of the many colleagues of the Phantom Lord. From now on, everyone would know of Mowgli's embarrassing incident. They would know that he had overestimated himself and rushed out, only to be cleanly defeated in the end. Poochie! The uncontrollable humiliation made Mowgli spit out another mouthful of blood. His head tilted to one side and he actually fainted. Seeing this, Noah frowned and snorted coldly. When I think that it was a guy like you who left a scar on my hand, I feel disgusted. After saying this, Noah lifted the foot that was stepping on Mowgli's chest and ruthlessly kicked his side ribs. Pung! In the muffled sound, Mowgli's limp body that was lying on the ground was kicked away like a rubber ball. He smashed into a table not far away and was buried by the table debris and tableware in a burst of crackling sounds. I'll say it again. Just like kicking away a rock that was in the way. After kicking Mowgli away, Noah stepped forward step by step and walked into the Phantom Lord's guild. He stared coldly at the group of sorcerers who looked like gangsters. Tell Joseph to get out here or else I'll tear this place down. The group of magic shooters from the Phantom Lord all retreated together with a frightened expression on their faces. This time no one dared to look down on Noah. It must be known that Mowgli's strength was one of the best in the Phantom Lord, and was only below Gadjaloo and the 4 elements. Even such a person was defeated by the little brat that everyone from the Phantom Lord had just mocked. Who would be stupid enough to continue to think that Noah was just a little brat? However, there was no lack of people in this world who overestimated their own strength. Everyone, don't be afraid. In the crowd, a deliberately fierce voice shouted. No matter how powerful he is, he's only one person. There are so many of us here, why should we be afraid of a kid? Everyone, let's attack together. This sentence made the magic shooters from the Phantom Lord hesitate for a moment, and then they all showed a sinister expression. Attack! Everyone attack together! Oh! Not long after, the whole Phantom Lord guild roared. One by one, magic shooters rushed out with weapons in their hands, like crazy wild dogs or bullies bullying the weak, and rushed towards Noah. With just a glance, Noah could tell that these so-called sorcerers who were rushing towards him were using magic similar to the outfit change type of magic. In other words, the magic these people used was the most common type. There were redeeming qualities. However, not a single person was able to display their full potential. Trash. Real trash. This was the drawback of the Phantom Lord focusing too much on developing the guild's scale and expanding its influence, but not concentrating on cultivating the strong. Therefore, other than Gadjaloo and the 4 elements, the only thing the Phantom Lord could bring out was the number of people. Thinking that it was such a guild that destroyed his own guild, Noah's anger rose in his heart. Square root. Spitting out a language that no one could understand, Noah raised his hand, gathered magic on his finger, and wrote a faintly discernible mysterious rune in the air in front of him. Wong! Suddenly, in front of Noah, the air suddenly condensed, spiraled, and turned into a gust of wind, like a substantial shock wave suddenly shaking out. Dong! In an instant, it was as if an invisible explosion had occurred in the entire Phantom Lord guild. The shock wave formed by the surging wind was like a wave, hitting the magic shooters one by one. Bang! The magic shooters of the Phantom Lord felt as if they had hit a wall, and then in bursts of screams they flew upside down or hit the ground or hit the wall, overturning tables and chairs and cracking the ground, causing the ground to shake violently. For a time, the sound of wailing continued to reverberate. In just a moment, all the magic shooters of the Phantom Lord were defeated by Noah. In this regard, Noah just withdrew his hand and sighed. Are you done watching the show? The whole place suddenly became quiet. After a while, a few figures appeared at the entrance of the stairs in front of Noah's eyes. It was Gadjaloo and the 4 elements. Noah's gaze swept across Gadjaloo, Aaliyah, Julian, Bunnyball and Saul and finally fell on Gadjaloo. From this person, Noah could sense the aura of the person from last night. Therefore, there was no doubt that the person who attacked the fairy tale guild was this guy in front of him. Gadgelouret Fox. Chapter 373. The wails of the sorcerers from the Phantom Lord were still echoing in the air. In the middle of the magic shooters lying on the ground, Noah, Gadgelou, Aaliyah, Julian, Bunnyball, and Saul looked at each other from a distance, causing the atmosphere in the air to become heavy. Too sad. Too sad. Aaliyah, whose eyes were wrapped with a cloth, cried without the slightest warning. A young life will wither here in a while, it's really too sad. No. 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 Saul twisted his body like an earthworm, spread out his hands pretentiously, tilted his head, and looked at Noah. Although it's just a group of small fries, to be able to defeat so many magic shooters in an instant, you're definitely not an ordinary kid. I'm very curious about who you are. The sharp-eyed Bunnyball saw the guild emblem on the back of Noah's hand and frowned. Fairy tale. Makarov actually let you come alone? Pitter-patter-patter. Julian, who was holding an umbrella, also had a sullen expression. Unfortunately, it seems that this person can't leave here. The 4 S-rank magic shooters from the Phantom Lord spoke, as if there was no one else around. They didn't take the wailing magic shooters lying on the ground seriously, nor did they show any importance to Noah, as if they had already sentenced Noah to death. Only Gadgelou, whose inorganic eyes seemed to be cast out of steel, stared at Noah with a gloomy expression. You're the one who attacked me last night, right? These words shocked the members of the 4 elements, and they all looked at Noah one after another. Him. The sorcerer who defeated the entire Phantom Lord was not worthy of much praise from the people of the 4 elements. After all, as a member of the same guild, it was impossible for the 4 Elements Guild not to know how lousy the normal magic shooters in the Phantom Lord were. But if the other party was the one who injured Gadgelou last night, then it would be different. After all, even Joseph claimed that in Fairy Tale, apart from those S-rank magic shooters, no one could injure Gadgelou to such an extent. In other words, if the person in front of him was really the culprit who injured Gadgelou and was also a magic shooter from Fairy Tale, then the other party's strength was definitely S-rank. The 4 elements had no choice but to pay attention to this matter. So that's how it is. Noah looked directly at Gadgelou and suddenly smiled. In other words, the person who attacked my house last night was really you, right? Gadgelou let out a strange laugh. That's right, I was the one who turned your union into a pile of trash. Is that so? Noah closed his eyes. Then I found the right person. As soon as his voice fell, boom! With the sound of an explosion and a gorgeous vortex of air under Noah's feet, Noah's body turned into a stream of light and flashed like a comet, instantly appearing in front of Gadgelou. In the next moment, a wisp of blue flame rose from Noah's hand and turned into a pitch-black knight's sword, which fell into Noah's hand. Clang! The slash that turned into a dazzling sword light suddenly flashed, and like a whip, it flung across Gadgelou's body. Poochie! A burst of blood burst out in front of Gadgelou's chest. Blood spilled into the sky. Gadgelou's pupils slowly shrank, and soon shrank to the size of a needle tip. His body carried a burst of blood, and as if he was flying out in the air, he retreated. As for the 4 elements, their expressions gradually stiffened when they saw the blood droplets flying into the air. Regardless of whether it was Aaliyah, Julian, Bunnyball, or Saul, none of them could react, let alone know what had happened. Only Gadgelou looked at Noah, who was 10 meters away a second ago and suddenly appeared in front of him. Noah's eyes flashed with a cold light as he held the Black Knight's sword in his hand. A sharp pain spread from his chest to his whole body as he felt it in hindsight. With a closer look, Gadgelou saw a hideous and terrifying wound from his shoulder to his ribs, along with a burst of red blood. His clothes were dyed red little by little. Gadgelou, who vaguely sensed what had happened, had a fierce expression. Ignoring the serious wound on his chest, he stomped on the ground with one foot and steadied himself. Then, he clenched his iron-gloved hand into a fist and raised it. Iron Dragon Staff. As soon as he finished speaking, Gadgelou waved his fist fiercely. His fist directly transformed into a thick iron rod, like a steel water pipe taken out from an underground tunnel somewhere. With a gust of wind, it violently shot towards Noah's face like an arrow released from a bow. Bang! Just as the thick iron staff was about to hit Noah's face, Noah raised his hand and firmly caught the incoming thick iron staff with a muffled sound and a slight gust of wind. Only then did the four elements react. Shocked, they jumped up without hesitation and put some distance between them. Looking at the scene in the middle, a shocked expression appeared on their faces. Drip! One hand turned into an iron staff and swung forward, while the other hand held the wound on his chest. A drop of blood dripped from Gajalu's body and gradually dyed the ground red. Cough cough. Gajalu couldn't help but cough up a mouthful of blood. He raised his head and stared at Noah not far in front of him, growling. Bastard! Not bad. You can still launch an attack with such a heavy injury. However, you dare to attack my house directly? If you don't have this ability, you won't be able to do it. Holding the iron staff formed by Gajalu's fist, Noah raised his eyes and looked at Gajalu. There was only calmness on his face. If I'm not wrong, you should be using the same spell as our guild's Naz Dragonslayer spell, right? Who would tell you this guy? Enduring the severe pain in his chest, Gajalu angrily shouted. Who are you? Since when did Fairy Tale have a character like you? I've never even heard of you. Damn it. It doesn't matter if you don't know me. Noah sneered. Next, I'll make sure you never forget me. This time, before his voice faded, Noah's figure suddenly rushed out, causing Gajalu's vision to blur. Then Noah's figure appeared in front of him again, bringing along a whirlwind. His fist punched out, viciously smashing towards Gajalu's head. Due to the destruction of his guild, Noah had unleashed every ounce of power he had this time. He had held nothing back. Under such circumstances, Gajalu was not a powerful opponent for Noah at all. Thus, when Noah's fist was about to reach Gajalu's head, Gajalu sensed it while being on high alert. His expression changed drastically, and in a hurry, he raised his hands and crossed them in front of his head. Mana surged up, turning his arms into steel. Clank! The heavy fist landed heavily on Gajalu's crossed arms that had turned into steel. Gajalu let out a muffled sound and his feet slid across the ground. After retreating for nearly 10 meters, he finally stabilized his body. Feeling the numbness from Noah's punch, shock appeared on Gajalu's face. His hands had turned into steel, yet he could still cause such an impact? Who on earth was this person? You're still looking. Gajalu yelled at the four elementals beside him in shock. Let's go together. Hearing this, Aaliyah, Julian, Bunnyball, and Saul suddenly woke up. They couldn't care less about their numbers and began to surge the mana in their bodies. But at this moment, Noah didn't choose to continue attacking. Instead, he lightly tapped the ground with the tip of his foot and rapidly retreated. Wong! Without giving Gajalu and the four elements any chance to react, a circle of gorgeous rainbow ripples spread out from the ground with Gajalu as the center and instantly covered the ground where Gajalu and the four elements were. In the gorgeous rainbow ripples, runes flashed one after another. Surprisingly, it was the Runi script. Chapter 374. Wong! The gorgeous rainbow-colored ripples seemed to have turned the ground into a rainbow-colored lake. Wherever the ripples touched, the ground was replaced by rainbow-colored light, turning into a gorgeous curtain of light. In the curtain of light, mysterious runes jumped up and down like small fish, blooming with dazzling light. When combined together, they formed the beautiful curtain of light on the ground. If one were to count them carefully, they would find that there were at least 1,000 runes written on the ground. In other words, Noah had unknowingly carved more than 1,000 runes on the ground where Gajalu, Aaliyah, Jalibian, Bunny Pill, and Saul were. If Qingzi, Yuzhu, or Chang, who was also a master of the Runi magic, knew about this, they would definitely be shocked. Although after a certain degree of improvement, magicians who use the Runi magic trick could more or less increase the speed of inscribing Runi magic trick. Imagine how proficient Noah was at inscribing so many Runi magic tricks without even realizing it. One could only imagine how proficient he was at the Runi magic trick. As for Noah, it had been less than 3 months since he had learned the first elementary level of the Runi script. In 3 months he had improved the Runi magic to such an extent? Perhaps the gods, priests, and witches who used the runes in Norse mythology could do it, but among modern magicians, there was absolutely no one who could do it to such an extent. Gajalu, Aaliyah, Jalibian, Bunnypill, and Saul, who didn't know what kind of feat Noah had done, only felt that something strange had happened on the ground. When they discovered that the ground had been replaced by the rainbow-colored curtain of light, they suddenly shouted in unison, "Oh no! Wang!" At this moment, the rainbow-colored curtain of light on the ground suddenly shook, and the light on it became even more dazzling. Immediately, dazzling pillars of light suddenly rose from the rainbow-colored curtain of light. Ding 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 ding. Every pillar of light raised a bell-like sound, and in a short period of time, countless pillars of light rose from the rainbow-colored curtain of light. When Gajaloo, Aaliyah, Jalibian, Bunnypill, and Saul reacted, the dazzling pillars of light rose from the rainbow-colored curtain of light and formed a light cage around them, imprisoning them inside. Wang! Gajaloo resisted the sharp pain in his body, raised his steel-like fist, and heavily smashed it on the light cage. Clang! In the end, the blow that was powerful enough to shatter the wall only caused a crisp sound. It was as if it had also hit steel, and there was not even a trace of a crack. What kind of magic is this? Rune magic? Aaliyah, who could no longer pretend to cry. She removed the bandage around her eyes. Her eyes, which looked like 4 petals combined, exuded a strange aura, which made Aaliyah's magic power by several levels. Sky Domain Absolute. Aaliyah raised her palm, which gathered a large amount of magic power, and like Gajaloo, heavily smashed it on the light cage. Bang! A powerful shockwave suddenly appeared like a storm and landed on the light prison. However, it only caused the entire light prison to tremble, but it was unable to create even a single crack. Impossible! Aaliyah cried out in alarm. I've already released all my magic power, but I still can't break this cage? Even Gajaloo and Aaliyah couldn't do anything to the prison of light, so Julian, Bunnyball, and Thor couldn't do anything. After all, Gajaloo was known as the most powerful sorcerer in the Phantom Lord. Aaliyah, on the other hand, was the leader of the 4 elements and the strongest of them all. If Gajaloo and Aaliyah couldn't break this cage, then Jalibian, Bunnypill, and Saul couldn't do anything either. Not even Jalibian. The umbrella in Jalibian's hand was thrown away at some point, and his body turned into water, but he couldn't pass through the cage. This cage can reflect magic power. Even the ground is imprisoned. Saul cried out. Even I, who can control sand, can't drill into the ground. There's no way out of this cage. Tisk! Bunnypill, who knew that magic was useless, even used the knife at his waist to slash at the light cage, but it only made a crisp clang sound. No physical attacks can't break it. In other words, the 5 strongest members of the Phantom Lord, with the exception of the guild leader Joseph, were all subdued by Noah in one move. In front of Noah, regardless of whether it was the strongest of the Phantom Lords, Gajaloo, or the 4 elements, who was comparable to an S-rank magic shooter, they were all like ordinary magic shooters lying on the ground. They were not a match for Noah's one move. This was to be expected. This cage, if it was the S-rank magic shooters of Fairy Tail, any one of them would have the ability to break it. Noah, who was holding the pitch-black night sword, stood in front of the 5 light cages and looked at Gajaloo's group of 5 as he sneered. And the S-rank sorcerer of the Phantom Lord doesn't seem to have the ability to do so. The expressions of Gajaloo and the 4 elements immediately turned ugly. In the outside world, people had always compared Fairy Tail and Phantom Lord, saying that the 2 guilds were evenly matched. Fairy Tail had 5 S-rank magic shooters, including Mira, Elusha, Kildas, Laxus, and Mishgang. The Phantom Lord also had Gajaloo, Aaliyah, Jubian, Bunnyball, and Thor, a group of 5 S-rank sorcerers. Therefore, outsiders had always thought that the 2 guilds were evenly matched. However, this was actually a misconception. The difficulty of the S-rank magic shooter's advancement test in each guild was different. As for Fairy Tail's S-rank magic shooter advancement test, it had always been known as the most difficult test. This was because only S-rank magic shooters could accept S-rank missions. Because S-rank missions were too dangerous, and because Makarov loved everyone in the guild and treated them as his own family and children, Makarov raised the difficulty of the S-rank magic shooter's advancement test to the highest level. That way, the magic shooters who could pass the test with powerful abilities would naturally have a higher chance of surviving the mission. But Phantom Lord was obviously different. Unlike Makarov, Joseph did not treat the members of the guild as his family. In Noah's opinion, the so-called S-rank magic shooters of Phantom Lord were better than Naz and Gray, while some could only be considered at the same level. They could not be compared to S-rank magic shooters like Mira and Elusha. And for Noah, who had absolute confidence in defeating such an opponent, even the 10 saints Makarov, Kildas and Laxus would not need too much time to go all out and take him down. Noah stepped forward and arrived in front of Gadjalu. He stretched out his hand and grabbed Gadjalu's collar, pulling him over. Bang! Gadjalu's head suddenly slammed into the light cage, making him furious. You bastard! You destroyed our guild, so I'll destroy your guild too. Noah tightened his grip on Gadjalu's collar and looked at Gadjalu's angry face with an indifferent smile. If you're not convinced, remember to look for me at any time. My name is Noah Doria. With that, Noah let go of Gadjalu, glanced at everyone present, turned around and walked out, disappearing in front of the door. The moment Noah left, all the runes on the ground swelled up. Boom! Not long after, a mushroom cloud rose into the sky amidst the thunderous explosion. Chapter 375. Pa! Pa pa! The sound of small stones rolling down echoed from time to time, spreading in all directions. Among them, a piece of stone rolled towards the distance, rolling to the foot of a clown-like boot. Bang! The clown-like boot violently lifted up the foot, crushing the stone that rolled to his foot. Following the crushing of the stone, an indescribable evil aura spread out from the owner of the foot. The person who came was the leader of the Phantom Lord, Joseph. Lifting his gloomy skeleton-like face, Joseph gloomily looked at the scene in front of him. He saw that the large building that should have stood there had long disappeared and was replaced by ruins. Rubble from the walls were piled up everywhere in the ruins. Broken pillars were lying crookedly on the bodies of the people buried under the rubble. Flames burned in every corner of the ruins, and a burnt smell filled the air. Seeing the guild building, which was still intact an hour ago, turn into a pile of rubble right before his eyes, the fury and murderous intent in Joseph's heart uncontrollably surged, causing the ink-black and evil magic energy within his body to continuously surge, bringing about an evil aura that sent chills down one's spine. There was only one person here, Joseph. To be precise, Joseph was the only one who maintained a complete consciousness and was unscathed. Looking at the magic shooters who were lying in the corners, buried under rubble or crushed by pillars, Joseph's anger and murderous intent became more and more violent. He didn't know if they were dead or alive, and the magic shooters who should have belonged to the Phantom Lord became more and more violent. Of course, even though Joseph was the guild leader of the Phantom Lord, he wasn't the kind of guild leader who would take pity on his subordinates and sympathize with them. For Joseph, as long as he could ensure the absolute ruling position of the Phantom Lord, and not reduce the overall strength of the Phantom Lord, then he would not feel any heartache about the deaths of his subordinates. The real reason why Joseph was so angry and couldn't help but squander his killing intent was that he had only been away for a short hour, and in the end, his own guild had been reduced to ruins. Who was it? Who had the guts and ability to do this? What about Gadjalu, Aaliyah, Julian Bunnyball and Saul? Could it be that the person who came was a powerful enemy of the Phantom Lord, who had the ability to destroy the elites of the Phantom Lord? Makarov? No. Impossible. If it was Makarov, then the Phantom Lord, who had already prepared the means to deal with Makarov, would not have become like this. With incomprehensible doubts, frenzied anger, and murderous intent, Joseph lifted his feet and walked into the ruined Phantom Lord. He came to the middle of what was supposed to be the hall. There were only 5 people lying here. They were the so-called elites of the Phantom Lord in Joseph's mind, Gadjalu and the 4 elements. However, at this moment, not only were these so-called elites of the Phantom Lord covered in wounds, but they were all on the verge of death. Especially Gadjalu, the injuries on his body were so severe that it was terrifying. If he was not treated, he might even die. In this regard, Joseph did not have any pity in his heart. There was only crazy anger and murderous intent. Pa-dash! At this moment, a charred hand reached out from the side and grabbed Joseph's foot. Joseph subconsciously lowered his head and looked at his feet. There, Aaliyah, who had unsealed the seal on her eyes, propped up a pair of eyes that seemed to be bleeding due to excessive use of magic power. She weakly and with great difficulty spat out a word. This word made the anger and murderous intent in Joseph's heart burst out instantly. Fairy tale. Not long after, Joseph's roar, accompanied by a dark evil magic power, surged into the sky. Joseph did not know. After the fairy tale guild was destroyed, Many people in the fairy tale guild were like him, roaring the Phantom Lord in their hearts. On the other side, when Noah returned to the fairy tale once again, a beautiful figure rushed out and hugged Noah. Big brother Noah. Lysana? Noah knew who the person in his arms was the moment he heard her address him. He patted her on the back and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. What's wrong? Why did you suddenly rush over like this? You're still talking about it. Lysana raised her head and glared at Noah. Soon after, she seemed to have thought of something and her slender hands began to caress Noah's body. How are you? Are you hurt anywhere? Let me see. I'm not hurt. Noah hurriedly grabbed Lysana's hand that was groping his body, knocked her on the head and said in annoyance, Don't worry about it. Don't make a fuss. People who don't know will think that I went to fight with someone. Hearing Noah's words, not to mention Lysana, everyone in the guild laughed bitterly. Didn't you go out to fight with someone? It's good that you're fine. Mira also walked out of the guild with a confused smile on her face. The guild has been destroyed. If even you, Noah, are injured, then we really don't know what to do. Mira is right. Elisha also came out and said with a serious expression, As long as you're fine, the guild can be rebuilt at any time. The guild leader's judgment is correct, so don't do anything rash in the future. Upon hearing this, Noah lifted his head, only to discover that the members of the guild had all come out of the guild with heavy expressions on their faces. Seeing the confusion on Myra's face, the worry on Lysana's face, Elisha's serious expression, and the solemn expressions of the guild members, Noah sighed inwardly. It seemed that the destruction of the guild didn't just affect him, but also his companions. Unlike the Phantom Lord, the members of Fairy Tale had a strong sense of belonging to the guild and treated it as their spiritual support. Now that their spiritual support was destroyed, it was easy to imagine how depressed they were. Everyone, don't look as if something has left you forever. Pull yourself together. Noah said loudly as he gently pushed Lysana away from his embrace. It's just a building. Although this building was built by the first president, even if it's destroyed, it doesn't mean that Fairy Tale is also destroyed. Everyone can just rebuild another one. Don't forget we're Fairy Tale. If those bastards who destroyed our guild see us like this, they'll be so happy that they won't be able to speak. Noah's voice reverberated in the surroundings and entered everyone's ears. We should let those bastards see our strength, not our weakness. So everyone pull yourself together and rebuild Fairy Tale with me. Noah's words seemed to sweep away the darkness in everyone's hearts, causing them to feel a surge of hot blood. Oh! In the next moment, the cheers belonging to Fairy Tale once again resounded through the air. Seeing this scene, Noah suddenly smiled. Mira, Lysana, and Elisha all wore gentle expressions as they looked at Noah with pride in their hearts. Even Makarov, who was quietly watching from afar. Chapter 376. Compared to the Phantom Lord, the damage done to the Fairy Tale wasn't as severe. After all, the Phantom Lord had turned the entire guild into ruins, while the Fairy Tale was only damaged by Gajalu's attack. It still looked like it was there, and it would not take long to repair it. However, in order to prevent the Fairy Tale from being destroyed by an unknown attack again, Noah suggested that the entire Fairy Tale be demolished and rebuilt. In fact, the Fairy Tale's guild building was considered very old among the many guilds in the Fiori Kingdom. In the Kingdom of Fiori, any guild with a bit of fame would build a grand guild building. It was necessary to show off one's status and reputation. No one would be willing to entrust a guild with a rundown guild building to complete, right? Therefore, for a guild, reputation was not only a matter of face but also related to business. It was very important. However, in the past, the Fairy Tale had never paid attention to this point. For Fairy Tale, the problem of appearance was actually not that big of a deal. Everyone in the Kingdom of Fiori knew of Fairy Tale's power and strength. Under such circumstances, all the clients would come because of its reputation, so why would they care about the appearance of the shop? But now this problem had to be brought up. A grand building had its advantages, and one of them was that it was not easy to damage. Therefore, Noah suggested to demolish and rebuild the guild building. Noah wasn't willing to let a guild that didn't include him be destroyed so easily. Therefore, in order to increase the guild's defense, Noah's suggestion was supported by everyone, including Makarov. Of course, Noah wanted to demolish and rebuild the guild not only to increase the guild's defense, but also to build a defense system for the guild. In the corner of the guild building that was demolished, Noah moved a building material in front of him to the side and shouted without turning his head. "Next one. Coming." On the side, Naz, who was carrying a building material, immediately placed the building material in front of Noah and ran to move the next one. At this time, Noah began to work on the building material in front of him. Gathering magic with his fingers, he drew a precise rune on the building material in front of him. These faintly discernible runes were like fireflies attached to the building material. Noah was carving the rune on the building material for the new guild building. This way, after using the building material carved with rune to build the new guild building, as long as he bought some magic crystals that could provide magic power, the runes carved in the new guild building could be used to defend against external enemies. It was for this purpose that Noah proposed to rebuild the guild building. If the original guild building was repaired, it could still carve runes. However, if the guild building was weak, the chances of the runes being damaged would be very high. This was why Noah came up with the idea of rebuilding the guild building. He wanted the guild building to be more resistant to damage, so as to not affect the runes. Beside Noah, the petite Lebby was holding a book. Wearing glasses, she was looking at the contents of the book, while looking at the runes that Noah was carving. Not long after, she spoke with great surprise. "This kind of language can't even be found in books. What kind of language is this?" "This is a very ancient language. I learned it in a very special place." Noah continued with the work at hand and answered without turning his head. "In this world, there is no one else besides me who can recognize it." "I didn't expect you to have such knowledge, Noah," Lebby asked curiously. "This kind of language can be used as magic? Can you teach me?" Noah was not surprised that Lebby would ask such a question. Lebby was a very studious girl. Her hobby was to read books. She had a certain preference for knowledge, and she had a very deep interest in language. Therefore, Lebby's magic was called three-dimensional language. It was a strange magic that could make the language itself three-dimensional, and realize the meaning of the language before throwing it at the opponent. For example, if the opponent was attacked by the fire language that Lebby drew, it would be as if they were hit by a fireball and would be burned. This kind of magic was somewhat similar to rune magic. Therefore, it was not strange that Lebby would be interested in rune magic. Unfortunately, even if she was interested, Lebby could not learn rune magic. "If you just want to learn the language, then I don't mind teaching you. But if you want to use it to use magic, then I'll have to disappoint you." Noah scratched his face with his free hand. "If you want to use this kind of language to the effect of magic, you need a condition that is almost impossible for people in this world to achieve. Lebby can't do it. If you want to use magic, you need to be in contact with the magic base plate. In the world of Night of the Magicians, Noah could use the world's active guidance to use magic no matter which world he was in, but others could not." "Is that so?" Lebby seemed to be a little disappointed, but she quickly pulled herself together. "It's okay. Even if I can't use it as magic, I'm still very interested in this language. Teach me." "Okay, I'll teach you when I have time." Noah did not refuse and directly agreed. "Lebby, you should be able to learn it quickly." "That's great. Thank you." Lebby suddenly smiled happily. Seeing this scene, not far away, Jet and Troy, who were helping to rebuild the guild, looked unhappy. Why is Lebby in Noah's world again? Undoubtedly, Noah has Mira. Mira, who was delivering drinks to the guild members, seemed to have heard someone calling her. She turned her head and looked at Jet and Troy in confusion. "What's wrong?" "No, nothing." Jet and Troy hurriedly waved their hands and shook their heads, but their eyes kept moving in the direction of Noah and Lebby, who were chatting happily. The more they looked, the more they felt a surge of jealousy in their hearts. Although Jet and Troy liked Lebby, they were not unreasonable people who could not stand Lebby getting close to other men. However, when they saw Lebby getting close to Noah, Jet and Troy felt an inexplicable uneasiness. Intuition told Jet and Troy that there might not be anything wrong with Lebby getting close to other men, but if she were to get close to Noah, even if there was nothing wrong, it might develop into something. Was this a man's intuition? Amidst this joyous and comical atmosphere, the rebuilding of the guild continued to progress. Da-da-da-da. At this moment, a series of extremely orderly and loud footsteps could be heard from outside. The footsteps gradually drew the attention of all the members of Fairy Tale who were working. Everyone looked towards the sound, but the scene that entered their eyes made them all stunned. On the street outside, a group of fully armed soldiers holding spear-like staff-shaped weapons rushed towards the rebuilt Fairy Tale. They looked like a group of knights, but in reality, they had the sense of an orderly army. At the sight of this military-like team, not only were the people present, but even Noah was a little stunned. That's the council? The council! Everyone looked at each other in confusion. At this moment the army stopped outside, and a strange person with a frog-like head walked out. I'm the messenger of the council. Without even greeting the members of Fairy Tale, or even looking at the confused Fairy Tale guild leader Makarov, the man who claimed to be the representative of the Senate said those words. By order of the council, we are here to arrest the criminal Noah Doria. Chapter 377. On the orders of the council, we are here to arrest the criminal Noah Dole. When these words echoed in the surroundings and drilled into everyone's ears, the whole place suddenly fell silent. Noah was startled at first. Then he squinted his eyes and smiled inexplicably. Arrest Noah? Beside him, Lebby cried out in surprise. It wasn't just Lebby. Even Mira, Lisanna, Alusha, and the others looked at Noah in surprise. Then they looked at each other with worried expressions. The messenger of the council didn't seem to notice the reactions of the people present. He looked around and said to himself, Where is Fairy Tale's Noah Dole? I am the guild master of Fairy Tale. Makarov parted the crowd and walked out. He looked at the messenger of the council with an unprecedentedly serious expression. May I ask, why is the council arresting Noah, arresting my grandson? As soon as he said this, a gloomy laugh sounded. Let me tell you, Makarov. Along with this uncomfortable voice, a guy wearing a sorcerer's hat and dressed like a sorcerer walked out from the army outside with a sinister smile on his face, entering the eyes of everyone present. That is, with Alusha as the leader, the Fairy Tale's archmages were shocked. Makarov's face darkened, and the veins in his eyes bulged. He looked at the newcomer with anger. Joseph. Long time no see, Sir Makarov. Joseph sneered. But I'm sorry, I'm not here to catch up. How dare you appear in front of me? Makarov waved his hand as if he would attack at any time. His voice was like thunder rumbling. How dare you appear in front of me after destroying my guild? Sir Makarov, you can't say such things. Joseph said with a smile. Undoubtedly, you are the ones who destroyed my guild. How can you accuse me so casually? Hearing Joseph's words, not to mention Makarov, even the members of Fairy Tale showed anger. This is something that everyone saw. Joseph spread his hands and looked around. After a while, he fixed his gaze on Noah, who was looking at them with a faint smile. A cold light flashed in his eyes. My guild was destroyed yesterday, and the members of my guild suffered great casualties. According to the people who woke up, Sir Makarov, the one who caused our guild to suffer such great losses is your dear grandson. Wah! This time Makarov finally showed a shocked expression. Together with the other guild members, he looked at Noah. Yesterday, Noah did indeed go to the Phantom Lord, and the members of Fairy Tale knew about it. Originally, Makarov and the others thought that Noah was only there to find trouble. They didn't expect that Noah would destroy their guild as well. Direct conflicts between guilds are prohibited. Sir Makarov, as the guild leader, you should know about this, right? The representative of the council spoke at the right time. And your grandson, as a member of your guild, knowingly broke the law. We have the right to arrest him. The members of the Fairy Tale Guild were all excited at the same time. If that's the case, that guy should be arrested too, right? Nez jumped out and pointed at Joseph, shouting loudly. That bastard also destroyed our guild. Look here. Look here. I destroyed your guild? Do you have evidence? Joseph smiled as if he had expected someone to bring this up. If you don't talk nonsense. We have many injured people here who testified that Mr. Noah destroyed our guild. Alusha and the others were furious. However, this was an unsolvable problem. When Gajalu came to destroy Fairy Tale, it was at night, so no one saw him. On the other hand, when Noah went to the Phantom Lord, it was broad daylight. Many people had seen Noah's figure, and he couldn't escape no matter how hard he tried. Joseph probably relied on this point to take the initiative to complain to the council, right? How despicable. Elisha glared at Joseph, her eyes full of sternness. As a member of the 10 great saint magicians and the guild leader of a guild, you don't even dare to admit your own actions. I already said that you can't talk nonsense without evidence, Joseph replied unhurriedly. As long as you can produce evidence, I'll admit it. If not, Mr. Noah will have to go to jail today. Noah. Levi, who was the closest to Noah, couldn't help but worry. Brother Noah. Lise Anna also came to Noah's side and tugged at the corner of Noah's clothes, her face full of anxiety. Noah. Mira couldn't help but call out softly, her face full of worry. Noah. Elisha, Lucy, Naz, Gray, Elfman, Kana, Hubby, and the others all looked in Noah's direction, not knowing what to say. Even Makarov closed his eyes, gritted his teeth and fell into silence. Presumably, no one would have thought that Joseph would be the first to complain and even lie through his teeth, right? Undoubtedly, only sorcerers with good moral conduct could be named as one of the 10 great saint magicians. Joseph's despicable actions didn't deserve the title at all. The council that gave Joseph the title of 10 great saint magicians must have had their eyes eaten by dogs. Noah Doria. The messenger from the council spoke again. Please come with us. Before that, please allow me to ask a question. Noah gently patted Lasana's hand, then walked out and came to Joseph with a smile. President Joseph, Phantom Lord is considered a very powerful guild, right? It's a little strange to say that your guild is very powerful. Joseph looked straight at Noah, his eyes slowly narrowing. However, it's true that the sorcerers in the industry have given our guild a high evaluation. I've heard more than once that Phantom Lord has the ability to become the strongest guild in the Fiori Kingdom. Noah glanced at Joseph with a half-smile. Then, Your Excellency, do you think that I, a brat who has no reputation in fairy tale, and isn't even an S-rank magic shooter, can destroy the existence of the strongest guild in broad daylight in front of the entire Phantom Lord, and even bring about great casualties to this guild? You're Makarov's grandson. Who would look down on you? Joseph said with a fake smile. In fact, it's true that you destroyed our guild. Many people can testify to this. That's true. Noah shrugged and laughed inexplicably. Speaking of which, even I'm surprised. The so-called #1 guild in the Fiori Kingdom is actually so weak that I can destroy it by myself. It really doesn't live up to its name. Joseph's smile froze. Compared to the Phantom Lord, our fairy tale is different, Noah said to himself. Not only did the enemy have the numbers of an entire army, but they also launched a sneak attack at night. Otherwise, our guild wouldn't have been destroyed like this. It seems that our guild is the #1 in the Fiori Kingdom. Nonsense! Joseph roared angrily. No one in your guild was there that night. Gadjaloo destroyed it easily by himself. This sentence was like an echo, constantly lingering in everyone's ears. The moment this sentence was heard, Noah laughed, Makarov laughed, and everyone present laughed. Only Joseph's gloomy face darkened when he came to his senses. Chapter 378. A wicked person complaining first? Lying with his eyes wide open? Despicable villain? Shameless behavior? Indeed, Joseph, who had all the above conditions, could be called a real villain. He had the strength to rival the 10 great saint magicians, but his conduct was so despicable that it made people speechless. As the saying goes, a shameless person is invincible. Although Joseph's move was extremely despicable, it was very effective. If not for the fact that the target was Noah, perhaps someone in fairy tale would have been tricked by Joseph just like that. However, Joseph's behavior in Noah's view was simply childish to the extreme. During the 1 year in the world of the Dark Bullet, Noah, because of establishing a relationship with Fairy Tale, had launched a variety of games with the Plundered Generation, led by the Celestial Chrysanthemum Prime under the background of politics. At that time, the various methods used by the important members led by the Celestial Chrysanthemum Prime even caught Noah, who possessed superhuman strength, unprepared. He almost fell into one trap after another, simply unscrupulous. That was a truly superb method. With these important members as enemies, if Noah did not have a certain strength and relied on his strength to overcome the waves of danger when he first arrived in the world of the Dark Bullet, Noah's reputation would have been ruined by those people who ate people without spitting out the bones. And Noah, who had withstood all these, gradually got used to these dangers and cultivated the vision and means to play games with those important members. Compared to those guys, Joseph's methods were simply easy to deal with. Noah had at least several methods to deal with him, but in the end, he used the simplest method to deal with him. This Joseph, not only was his methods and conduct despicable, even his temperament was so unbearable. Besides having strength, he had no other strong points. If Noah knew that Joseph let Gadjaloo attack Fairy Tale, in order to lure Makarov to make a move and plot against Makarov, then Noah would have a deeper understanding of Joseph's despicable actions. Unfortunately, there was no chance. A simple method of provocation, and Joseph self-destructed. Under the mocking gazes of the members of Fairy Tale, Joseph looked at Noah with an ugly expression, his eyes revealing an extremely obvious murderous intent. "You actually schemed against me? Not bad." Noah bluntly sneered. "I thought that with your despicable actions, you wouldn't be able to see through my open scheme." Good. Joseph roared. Makarov really gave birth to a good grandson. Hearing this, Noah smiled but didn't say anything. By the way, to the outside world, Makarov had always claimed that Noah was his biological grandson. The identity of his adopted grandson was only known to the old members of Fairy Tale. That was why Joseph said that. Ahem. The council's emissary didn't seem to think that things would develop to this point. He quickly coughed and glanced at Joseph. "I'm sorry, President Joseph, but please come with us." "Arrest me?" Joseph was so angry that he laughed. "You mean that I have to be judged by the council with that kid? To be precise, only you, not me." Noah turned his head and looked at the council's emissary. "If you ask the residents of Magnolia, you will know that our guild was attacked the night before the destruction of the Phantom Lord. The council's emissary provoked the Phantom Lord first. I was just retaliating." Hearing Noah's words, the sorcerers in Fairy Tale began to clamor. That's right. It was the Phantom Lord who provoked us first. They should be the ones to be arrested. We are the victims." Ahem. Makarov pretended to cough. His old face relaxed. "That's right, the council's emissary. The council will uphold justice for us, right? This? Of course." The council's emissary let out a few dry laughs. "We will uphold justice." As soon as he finished speaking, the military-like people waiting outside looked at each other and approached Joseph's direction. However, at this moment Joseph suddenly raised his head. His eyes were filled with dark emotions. Boom! A gale of pitch-black mana carried with it an extremely dark and evil aura as it swirled around Joseph, making him look like a demon. Makarov, who was the first to react, turned pale with fright and shouted, "Be careful!" Almost at the same time, Joseph's angry roar sounded. "Go to hell!" Joseph raised his hands. The dark magic on his body flowed into his palms like the stinky sewage in a swamp and gathered in a whirlpool. Deathstorm. Without the slightest hesitation, Joseph gathered all the mana in his body into his most powerful attack, transforming it into a solid dark shockwave. As if projecting a pitch-black light wave, the shockwave pushed forward amidst the sharp sonic boom. Thus, the dark magic shockwave was like a cannonball. It rubbed against the atmosphere and caused the atmosphere to tremble slightly. It brought about a strong gust of wind and shot out violently. The target was Noah, who was closest to Joseph. In the next second, the pitch-black storm drowned Noah in the violent sound of the wind. "Noah!" The group of Fairy Tale members all cried out involuntarily. Mira and Lise Anna felt their vision darken and almost fainted. "Ha ha ha ha!" Joseph's maniacal laughter reverberated. "Joseph!" Makarov's furious roar resounded in the sky above Fairy Tale. It was like thunder lasting for a long time. However, the members of Fairy Tale were worried a little too early, and Joseph was happy a little too early. In the area covered by the dark storm, a dazzling white light suddenly spread out like a tide. It instantly covered the area where the dark storm was wreaking havoc. Pung! In the next instant, the pitch-black storm that was covered by the white light paused as if it had been neatly sliced apart. Amidst a deafening explosion, it shattered, exposing Noah, who was inside, to the sunlight once again. Joseph's maniacal laughter came to an abrupt end. Noah. Everyone, led by Mira and Lisanna, was overjoyed. Noah, however, slowly raised his head and looked at Joseph. The corner of his mouth slowly rose. This way, I'll be the culprit who destroyed our guild. Even if I kill you, it'll only be in self-defense, right? Hearing this, regardless of what the members of Fairy Tale and the members of the Senate were thinking, Joseph's eyes widened as he suddenly understood. It turned out that Noah had long predicted that he would launch a deadly sneak attack on him. He had been secretly on guard, but he didn't take any precautions. Instead, he purposely exposed an opening and waited for Joseph to make his move. This way, even if Noah attacked Joseph and even killed him, it would only be in self-defense. The emissaries of the Senate and the knights from the Senate had personally witnessed all of this. This was more useful than any evidence. That was to say, Joseph had always been trapped in Noah's scheme. Not only was he forced to self-destruct by a simple provocation, but now he even handed over the power of life and death to Noah. However, in response to this, Joseph roared loudly. Self-defense? Kill me? Are you saying that you want to kill me? Kill me, one of the 10 Saint Magi? You want me to kill you? Noah sneered. You think too highly of yourself. Saying this, Noah walked forward step by step. President Joseph, I just happen to have a pet. Now, let it have a taste of the abilities of the number 1 guild in the Fiori Kingdom, and one of the 10 Saint Magi. Chapter 379. Wang. A resplendent golden radiance blossomed from Noah's bandaged arm. That radiance was so dazzling that it made people want to worship it. Like flowing water, it wandered around Noah's body. Not long after, it converged in front of Noah, as if it was giving color to an invisible existence. In the next second, within the resplendent golden radiance that converged like flowing water, an extremely majestic golden wolf with resplendent fur slowly appeared. Roar! Coming from a mysterious existence that only existed in fantasy and legends, a resounding roar that seemed to awaken ancient memories resounded. Everyone present felt as if their souls were moved by this mysterious existence, faintly trembling. Looking at the figure of the golden wolf Bio howling at the sky, many people felt as if they were looking at a dreamlike scene. For a moment they couldn't help but be infatuated, including Joseph. However, in the next second, Noah's calm words pulled Joseph, who felt as if he was in a dream, back to reality, and announced the beginning of Joseph's journey to hell. Bio, kill him. The golden wolf Bio fiercely stared at Joseph with his emerald-like eyes, a berserk bloody radiance surfacing within them. Following the sudden sound of wind breaking, Joseph only felt a chill on his skin. Soon after, he saw the golden wolf Bio disappear from his original position, turning into a meteor-like resplendent brilliance, explosively rushing over. Joseph's pupils shrank, but in such a short time, the meteor-like resplendent brilliance arrived in front of Joseph. Soon after, a sharp claw that flickered with cold light cut through the air, bringing along a sharp gale, imprinted itself into Joseph's shrank pupils. In this instant, Joseph's scalp felt as if it had exploded. His heart also shrank in a short moment, fiercely tightening. The shadow of death that rose from the bottom of his heart told Joseph, if he was hit by this claw, then even if Joseph was one of the 10 great Saint Magi, he would still die on the spot. At this moment of life and death, Joseph finally displayed his extraordinary combat experience and sharp intuition as one of the 10 great Saint Magi. He forcibly resisted the shadow of death that rose from the depths of his heart as pitch-black mana burst out of his body, covering it completely. Dong! The sharp claws slammed down and heavily smashed into the pitch-black mana surging from Joseph's body. An unparalleled force gushed out like a flood. Bang! It was as if a heavy hammer had landed directly on a wall. A heavy muffled sound rang out. Slap! Amidst the muffled thud, Joseph's knees buckled as though an extremely heavy object was pressing down on his shoulders. His knees slammed into the hard floor, causing the floor to crack like a spider web. Blocking the almost fatal sharp claws, before Joseph could react, an afterimage once again brought along a sharp gust of wind and approached him like a shadow. That was the tail of the golden wolf Bio. Bang! The tail that turned into a heavy whip fiercely landed on Joseph's chest. The sudden burst of power directly sent this 10 great Saint Magi flying. He fell to the ground with his back on the ground and rubbed a deep mark that was more than 10 meters long on the ground before slowly coming to a stop. Roar! The golden wolf Bio's excited roar resounded as if he had won a victory. Watching this scene unfold before their eyes, everyone present, whether it was the members of the fairy tale or the members of the council, sucked in a breath of cold air. One claw. One twitch. Within 2 moves, a 10 great Saint Magi was knocked to the ground just like that? Impossible. On the other side, Joseph, who had climbed up from the ground in a somewhat sorry state, stared at the golden wolf Bio. His face was filled with fear and fury as he madly roared. How can I lose to a beast? Not knowing if he understood Joseph's words, a fierce glint flashed in the eyes of the golden wolf Bio. His entire body seemed to have turned into liquid as his fur stood up. His 4 limbs heavily stepped on the ground and his lower body arched like a crouching leopard. Chee! The sound of wind breaking resounded in the field once again. The golden wolf Bio, who had turned into a stream of light, swept towards Joseph's direction with extreme speed just like before. However, this time Joseph was already prepared. The instant the sound of wind breaking resounded, he bitterly clenched his teeth and a pitch-black magic suddenly surged out from his body. As the all-encompassing pitch-black magic rose, it actually transformed into a huge area of 3 to 4 meters in diameter around Joseph. Like a swamp, it completely covered Joseph's body within. From Joseph's perspective, he had used the same method to defend himself just now. Although he was sent flying like a dead dog by the golden wolf Bio in the end, if he set up a defense 10 times denser than before, then the golden wolf Bio's attack would be completely blocked. This idea couldn't be said to be wrong. However, Joseph didn't know that the golden wolf Bio's specialty wasn't strength. The golden wolf Bio's specialty was speed, and his innate transformation ability. Woo! With a long howl, the golden wolf Bio, who was shooting towards Joseph like a meteor, trembled. His body actually disintegrated while he was flying, and in the end, he turned into a ball of resplendent golden flames. Bang! With a loud explosion, the golden flames formed by the golden wolf Bio suddenly expanded. In less than a few seconds, it expanded from the size of a person to a size of 2 to 3 meters in diameter. Like a small spinning sun, it was also like a storm formed by flames. It swept out in all directions and fiercely pounced on the pitch-black magic covering Joseph. Chee! The resplendent golden flames burned the pitch-black swamp. Wung! Under the burning of the resplendent golden flames, the swamp formed by the pitch-black magic that pervaded the air violently churned and trembled with the vibrations of the atmosphere. In just a short while, the swamp that was originally as dense as ink became thinner, and was gradually replaced by the golden flames. Under such circumstances, the golden flames were still burning the swamp-like area. In the pitch-black swamp formed by the pitch-black magic, Joseph's extremely miserable shrieks resounded, causing the surrounding people to shudder and reveal fearful expressions. To the people here, one of the 10 great saint magicians was unrivaled. Even Naz wouldn't dream of defeating one of them. But now, one of the 10 great saint magicians was shrieking miserably in front of everyone. Who wouldn't be fearful? Deathstorm. As the pitch-black swamp became thinner and the pain from his body became more intense, Joseph finally couldn't endure it any longer. With a low growl, he erupted with all the magic in his body, causing the pitch-black swamp to tumble and turn into a pitch-black storm that shook and expanded from the pitch-black swamp. Wherever the pitch-black storm passed, space would tremble. The sharp sound of the wind could be heard clearly in the entire Magnolia. Roar! As the pitch-black storm engulfed the golden flames, Bio's resounding roar reverberated within the golden flames. It swept up the golden flames and turned them into a storm that tangled with the pitch-black storm in the increasingly thin swamp. Boom! 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 As the golden storm and the pitch-black storm clashed in the swamp, the pitch-black swamp began to tumble violently. Sounds of explosions and bursts of powerful shockwaves could be heard. A moment later, as an energy ripple spread, the entire swamp was shaken apart. Boom! After the swamp was shaken apart, 2 figures slowly emerged from it and were exposed to everyone's eyes. Among them, Golden Wolf Bio's hair stood on end, and he was in high spirits. On the other hand, Joseph's clothes were tattered, and his body was dripping with blood. He looked extremely pathetic and miserable. Clearly, Joseph wasn't a match for Golden Wolf Bio at all. Chapter 380. Golden Wolf Bio, who should have disappeared along with the black storm and swamp, stood unscathed in the center of the cracked ground. His entire body seemed to be burning with flames as it undulated. Pa! Opposite the completely unharmed Golden Wolf Bio, Joseph knelt on the ground with one knee amidst a clear sound. His entire body was dripping with blood, and the robe on his body had become tattered like a piece of cloth. This caused Joseph's face to be filled with malevolence and viciousness. His viper-like eyes stared intently at the Golden Wolf Bio opposite him as traces of madness and disbelief fluctuated within his heart. Impossible! 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 It was clear that as one of the 10 Saint Magi and the leader of the number 1 guild in the Fiori Kingdom, the conceited Joseph simply couldn't accept the fact that he had lost to a golden wolf of unknown origins. However, no matter how unbelievable it was a fact that he had lost to the Golden Wolf Bio. Although Joseph was one of the 10 Saint Magi, and his strength was comparable to that of Makarov, Lax's and Kilda's, the Golden Wolf Bio was in existence above them. As a variant of the fantasy breed, the Golden Wolf Bio was far superior to the 10 Saint Magi in terms of both life and strength. Although Joseph wasn't ranked at the bottom of the 10 great Saint Magi, he was only ranked in the middle. With Bio's strength that could rival Noah at full strength, it wouldn't be too difficult for him to deal with someone ranked in the middle of the 10 great Saint Magi. Of course, Joseph, who didn't know what kind of existence Bio was and why he possessed such strength, couldn't believe such a result. It wasn't just Joseph. Even the members of Fairy Tale were in disbelief. So strong. Naz stared at the Golden Wolf Bio with a face full of passion, seemingly very excited. That wolf is so strong. That wolf. Makarov looked at the Golden Wolf Bio with a grave expression. Where did that magical creature come from? So strong. Her eyes shone with stars. Where did Big Brother Noah find such a powerful wolf? Could that be the companion that Noah mentioned before? Elisha also stared at the Golden Wolf Bio. That kind of strength really can't be underestimated. The members of Fairy Tale, led by Mira, also turned their gazes to the Golden Wolf Bio. Their faces, eyes, and even hearts were filled with excitement. After all, everyone had seen how the wolf that could defeat the 10 great Saint Archmage Masters had split from Noah's body. In other words, no matter what, that unbelievably powerful wolf was the companion of Fairy Tale. As long as they could confirm this, it would be enough for the people of Fairy Tale. As for the members of the council, they had long been stunned. How is it, President Joseph? Noah, who was standing behind the Golden Wolf Bio, looked down at Joseph, who was kneeling on the ground with one knee on the ground, and mocked him. He mocked. Are you satisfied with my pet? That one sentence caused Joseph's entire body to tremble. It wasn't because of excitement or fear, but because of anger. That was because, as one of the 10 Saint Magi, Joseph had indeed lost to the Golden Wolf Bio. And the Golden Wolf Bio was the pet that Noah spoke of. One of the 10 great Saint Magi lost to the pet of an unknown member of Fairy Tale. This is big news. Noah clapped his hands with a smile, but there wasn't the slightest trace of a smile in his eyes. His words made Joseph's heart go crazy. As expected, the Phantom Lord is only at this level? Noah Dole. Joseph's chest heaved up and down as he roared in a hoarse voice. His voice was filled with resentment and fury, causing the people around him to feel a chill. Don't look at me like that. From the moment you plan to destroy my guild, your fate has already been decided. Noah's smile slowly disappeared as a cold light bloomed in his eyes. I'd like to see what qualifications you have to use your smelly guild to challenge Fairy Tale. Bio. Roar. The Golden Wolf Bio let out a low growl. You want to kill me? A strange smile suddenly appeared on Joseph's cold face. It won't be that easy. As soon as he finished speaking, strands of cold black gas appeared on Joseph's body and covered his body. Joseph turned into a black shadow that merged with the ground and strangely disappeared. He escaped. The people around Fairy Tale all cried out in surprise. This Joseph indeed had always been doing things that surprised people. As one of the top 10 Saint Magicians, Joseph was not stingy with his underhanded methods. He even shamelessly called his guild the number 1 guild in the Fiori Kingdom, and he himself was the guild leader of this guild. Now Joseph, who had such an identity, was complacent, and would even go crazy because of Noah's insults, chose to escape without hesitation. Who would have thought? Can you escape? Looking at the place where Joseph originally stood, Noah forcefully waved his hand. Bio! As soon as Noah's voice fell, the golden wolf Bio in front of Noah jumped up and immediately landed heavily on the ground. Boom! As if a heavy mountain had fallen from the sky and smashed into the scene, the ground shook with the golden wolf Bio as the center. Inch by inch, the ground cracked open, and a ripple-like impact spread out. Bang! Wherever the impact ripple passed, in a corner of the cracked ground, accompanied by a dull thud, a black shadow was shaken out of the ground with a groan. Like a large piece of trash, it fell to the ground. Picking himself up from the ground with a pale face, Joseph wanted to continue escaping, but his eyes were covered by a black shadow, causing his body to stiffen. With great difficulty, he raised his head and looked forward. There, the golden wolf Bio looked down at Joseph from above. In his beast eyes there was contempt and disdain, but more than that, there was a terrifying murderous aura. No! No! Joseph's body trembled. This time it was really because he was afraid. I am the guild leader of the Phantom Lord, the leader of the #1 guild in the Fiori Kingdom. You can't kill me, you can't kill me. Just as Joseph's voice faded, an emotionless voice was transmitted into his ears, causing all the pores on his body to tighten in an instant. Despicable person! You deserve to die. Along with this sentence, the golden wolf standing in front of Joseph exploded with golden light. With a spin of his body, he once again turned into a golden flame. No! In Joseph's desperate roar, the golden wolf Bio, who had turned into a golden flame, suddenly spun at a high speed, as if even the surrounding air was sucked into the flame. As it spun at a high speed, it carried an extremely terrifying temperature as it flew out and fiercely landed on Joseph's chest. Bang! An incomparably ferocious temperature erupted from the golden flames, smashing heavily onto Joseph's body in an almost berserk manner. Joseph, who did not have the strength to put up any defense, instantly turned from pale to red. A large amount of blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. The clothes on his body were instantly burnt to nothing. His body was wrapped up in an extremely short period of time under the eruption of the golden flame. Ah! Suddenly a mournful scream resounded in the distant sky. After the golden flame lasted for nearly half a minute, it finally gradually rose up and turned back into a wolf form, landing in front of Noah. The figure that was previously in the flame had completely turned into a pile of ashes at this very moment, drifting away with the wind. The entire place suddenly became quiet, falling into a deathly silence. Seeing Noah caressing the head of the golden wolf Bio, who had become extremely docile, everyone knew Noah's name was going to shake the entire Fiori Kingdom. Chapter 381. Phantom Lord has been disbanded. News of the destruction of Fairy Tale and the destruction of Phantom Lord spread like wildfire across the entire kingdom of Fiori. 3 days after the destruction of 2 guilds capable of competing for the #1 spot in the kingdom of Fiori, the news spread across the entire kingdom of Fiori. Now, as long as one was a citizen of the Fiori Kingdom, they would definitely know about this matter. They would know that the guild master of Fairy Tale, Makarov Doria, had a grandson named Noah Doria. They would know that Noah Doria had single-handedly destroyed the guild Phantom Lord, which was on par with his own guild. They would know that the guild master of Phantom Lord, one of the top 10 Saint Magi, Joseph Bala, had been killed by one of Noah Doria's golden wolves. He knew that after Joseph's death, all the branches of the Phantom Lord were disbanded by the various organizations in the council in just half a day. This was to be expected. It was said that the guild master of Phantom Lord, Joseph, had secretly planned to destroy Fairy Tale. However, after the members of Fairy Tale had destroyed Phantom Lord, he went to the council to complain. Because of this incident, Joseph would be stripped of his title as one of the top 10 Saint Magi by the council. After all, the title of the top 10 Saint Magi was only given to sorcerers with good conduct. A sorcerer like Joseph who had committed such despicable acts did not have the right to be one of the top 10 Saint Magi. Furthermore, Joseph had viciously launched a sneak attack on the members of Fairy Tale under the witness of the council's emissary and the entire Night Order. What's more, it was a killing blow. Although Joseph was killed in the end, his actions had already spread throughout the Fiori kingdom. Even if the council wanted to protect Joseph's title, it would be impossible. Under such circumstances, the Phantom Lord, who had lost the leader of one of the 10 Saint Magi, was quickly disbanded. The reason was simple. It was because they had offended too many people. Therefore, not long after Joseph's death, the various branches of the Phantom Lord were besieged by the Dark Guild's magic shooters who had been eradicated by the Phantom Lord. The Dark Guild's magic shooters were also targeted and made things difficult for the Phantom Lord's magic shooters. The magic shooters of the Phantom Lord's magic shooters also attacked the Phantom Lord's magic shooters. As a result, the various branches of the Phantom Lord were either annihilated or disbanded under the pressure of the Phantom Lord. On the other hand, Phantom Lords suffered huge casualties because of Noah. In the end, they could only disband and cease to exist in the form of a guild. And so, 3 days later, the Phantom Lord completely disappeared from the borders of the Kingdom of Fiori. In comparison, Fairy Tail's reputation had once again soared. They had solidified their position as the #1 guild in the Fiori Kingdom, and their name had shaken the entire Fiori Kingdom. However, to the people of Fairy Tail, these were not enough to arouse their interest. This was because while the people outside were talking about this incident for Fairy Tail, this incident had yet to truly come to an end. This was the Fiori Kingdom's branch of the council. At this moment, Noah was in this branch of the council. In a courtroom-like venue, Noah stood on the witness stand in the middle of the courtroom. In front of him there was a high platform. At the top of the platform there was a seat. In the middle of the platform there were 9 other seats. Other than the top seat, the other 9 seats in the middle of the platform were all occupied. Lifting his head, Noah's gaze swept across each of the people sitting on the platform. His eyes narrowed slightly. These 9 people were the council members. They formed the core of the council, the highest level of the entire Magic Council. In other words, in the council that managed and supervised the various official guilds, like a national public security agency, these 9 council members and the absent president of the council were the highest existences. Now, these people were in the middle of a trial for Noah. Noah Dole. Sitting at the bottom of the platform, a messenger from the council held a piece of paper in his hand and said, "Do you admit to your crime?" When this sentence resounded throughout the court, the group of council members on the platform all looked at Noah. Their eyes were filled with all kinds of emotions. Among them, some of them were friendly, some of them were sizing him up, some of them were malicious, and some of them were taking pleasure in his misfortune. Basically, there were all kinds of gazes. And among these gazes, there was only one that was friendly. It was a short old man. According to Noah's knowledge, this old man's name was Yajima. He was a good friend of Makarov's when he was young. That was why Yajima was so friendly to Makarov's grandson, Noah. In this regard, Noah only responded to Yajima with a smile and then spoke indifferently. "May I ask everyone, what crime have I committed?" On the platform, a council member named Ogu sneered at Noah and said, "I advise you to confess honestly. Otherwise, the crime will only be more serious later." This council member named Ogu was one of the people who looked at Noah with malicious eyes. Apart from this person, there was another council member named Michelo who also looked at Noah with malicious eyes. It was said that these 2 people were extremely disgusted with Fairy Tail. They had proposed countless times to disband Fairy Tail, but because of Yajima's relationship, it was always delayed. Towards these 2 people, Noah's attitude was not so friendly. "That's why I want to ask, what exactly is my crime?" Noah helplessly spread out his hands. "Could it be that the council members called me here just to make me confess to a crime that I didn't commit?" "How rude!" Michelo shouted. "Are you saying that as council members, we can't distinguish between right and wrong? If that's not the case, then please speak frankly and don't beat around the bush, okay?" Noah impatiently waved his hand. "If you call me here to convict me like this, everyone will think that you are trying to make things difficult for me, right?" Noah Dole. Ogu slammed the table and stood up. "Please pay attention to your attitude." As soon as this sentence fell, a cold gaze swept towards Ogu. Ogu's face stiffened, and his whole body froze in place. "The ones who should pay attention to your attitude are you all." Noah's sharp eyes swept across the council members of the Magic Council. As members of the council, you do have the right to ban crimes, but I never knew that you have the right to shout at people from a high position. Even if you are a sinner, you should still be respected. This is a principle that the royal family of the Fiori Kingdom knows. If the so-called council members are like this, then I should consider whether I should respond to the kingdom and impeach you." As he said this, the corners of Noah's mouth curled up. "I believe that when the time comes, there will be quite a few guilds that will be angered by your arrogant attitude and agree with our fairy tale." Hearing this, other than Yajima and the other council members, Ogu, Michilo, and the others' faces turned red. This was because they were angry. These people would never have thought that an ordinary member of Fairy Tale would criticize all the counselors in such a domineering manner, and even threaten to impeach them. However, as the enforcer of law and justice, Noah's words were not inappropriate. In other words, unless the council members really wanted to be impeached, they could only swallow this anger in order to protect their status. Chapter 382. Following Noah's forceful speech, the entire court was covered in an oppressive silence. Ogu, Michilo, and the rest of the judges, whose impression of Noah was already bad because of Fairy Tale, had ugly expressions on their faces, but they couldn't say a single word. They could only stand there stiffly without moving. Under such circumstances, one of the counselors who acted as a middleman spoke. "Well, everyone, please calm down. We're here to conduct a fair trial as members of the Senate. We can't let our personal emotions affect the fairness of the trial. It'll be even more disgraceful if we get into an argument." Hearing this, Ogu, Michilo, and the others snorted and turned their heads away. Noah, on the other hand, shifted his gaze to the person who spoke, his eyes flickering with a peculiar glint. The person in front of him was about the same age as Noah. He had short blue hair, and on one side of his cheek, with the eye as the center, a sword-like tattoo was engraved on his handsome face. This wasn't the first time Noah saw this face. He had seen it more than once when he was young. At that time, Noah went out to work for the first time as a magic shooter. When he took on a mission, he used that mission as an opportunity to get to know many people. That was when Mira, Elfman, and Lisanna got to know each other. And during that mission, Noah also got to know two other people. One was like Naz, a dragon whose parents taught him magic went missing, and he met a dragon slayer magic shooter in the forest, Wendy Mabel. The other was a youth who inexplicably fainted in front of Noah and Wendy Jalal. The judge in front of him looked exactly the same as Jalal. When he first saw this person, Noah was shocked and thought that the other party was the youth who called himself Jalal. In the end, after the other party saw Noah, he only looked at Noah with an amused expression. His eyes didn't reveal any other emotions from seeing or hearing Noah's name. Therefore, Noah concluded that this person definitely did not recognize him. As a matter of fact, Noah was even more certain after knowing the other party's name. Zeke Klein. That was the name of the judge in front of him. The other party was not Jalal. But for some reason, this guy called Kieran looked very similar to Jalal. Noah did not know the reason or secret behind this, so he chose to wait and see. However, Noah had a feeling that this guy named Zeke wasn't that simple. "Sir Noah, we have called you here to discuss the matter of Joseph's death," Zeke said to Noah with a smile. "We all know that Joseph destroyed your guild and then ambushed you. Even if he was killed, it could only be said that you were defending yourself. However, some of the people here think that your defense is a little too much, so they want to convict you." "Zeke Klein, don't casually stir up trouble. This is just the truth," Michilo said with an unkind expression. Many people saw with their own eyes how his golden wolf defeated President Joseph with an absolute advantage. After President Joseph was defeated, he allowed his servant to kill President Joseph. This is no longer a matter of self-defense. It's possible that it's premeditated murder. "Michilo, your words are a bit too serious." At this time, Ajima spoke. "He's just a child. How could he deliberately kill someone like President Joseph? So what if he is a child? He is Makarov's grandson," Okai said without hesitation. "I definitely don't believe that he didn't deliberately condone it. I think it's inappropriate to judge President Joseph's death as a case of self-defense." Hearing this, Noah laughed. His laughter was unusually harsh. Ogu and Michilo glared at Noah. "What are you laughing at?" "What am I laughing at?" Noah said bluntly. "I'm laughing at you guys. Is there really nothing wrong with your brains? What did you say? Ogu and Michilo were angry, but what they got in return was Noah's mocking gaze. I should be the one asking you what you are talking about, right? Noah looked at Ogu and Michilo with an extremely disdainful gaze. What did you think I just heard? You said that many people saw my Bio defeat Joseph with an absolute advantage, so attacking the defeated President Joseph became a murder. Then, did you properly ask those people whether President Joseph, who was defeated by Bio, gave up on killing me? Noah said to Michilo righteously that President Joseph would launch a sneak attack on me when I wasn't on guard. Then it wouldn't be strange for him to attack me after losing to Bio. In order to protect myself, I let Bio attack me, and in the end I killed him. Could this be considered intentional murder? Michilo was speechless. And what you said is even more ridiculous. Noah didn't hide his mockery. You said that you don't believe that I didn't deliberately condone it. Then I condone it on purpose? You said that you don't think it's appropriate to be judged as self-defense. Then I have to be judged as premeditated murder? Who do you think you are? You. OG's eyes widened, and his face was filled with anger. In one sentence, if you want to convict me, then show me evidence. Noah glanced at Ogu and Michilo. If you want to convict me without evidence, then it will only show the selfish desires of some people. I suggest that you guys quickly get rid of such a black sheep. Otherwise, who knows when something big will happen. At that time, all the counselors will have to bear the responsibility. I'm sure that your expressions will be more interesting than I imagined. As soon as he said that, the other counselors' expressions all changed. They all stared at Ogu and Michilo, and their expressions changed. Seeing this, OG's and Michilo's expressions changed, becoming both shocked and furious. This made Noah laugh coldly in his heart. No matter where the so-called high officials were, as long as they had power, then apart from a very small number of people, most of them would become extremely selfish. Just like how the higher one's status was, the more afraid one would be of death. These people would only seek personal gain for their status and power, and were afraid that they would have to bear the responsibility when something big happened. Noah had seen many such people in the world of the Dark Bullet. Therefore, a casual sentence to sow discord was enough to make these counselors fight amongst themselves. And as expected, most of these so-called counselors had their hearts corroded by power, and were corrupted by the regime. Therefore, Noah could already predict how things would develop next. Ahem ahem. A counselor deliberately coughed twice and raised his hand. I think that the evidence to convict Noah Doria is insufficient. We should acquit Noah Doria on the spot. Ogu and Michilo's expressions changed again and again. Under such circumstances, the other counselors began to agree. I agree. I agree. I agree. 3 other counselors followed suit. I agree too. A gorgeously dressed woman also raised her hand. I also agree. Chicharito spread out his hands and said, Haha, isn't that great? Ajima laughed out loud. Of course I can't disagree. You. Ogu and Michilo were furious at first, but soon after, they looked at each other, and their eyes revealed sullen emotions. If they agreed with Ogu and Michilo to convict Noah without evidence, then once the matter was exposed, the counselors would have to bear the crime of deliberately framing him. Those selfish counselors naturally wouldn't put themselves in such a dangerous position just to agree with Ogu and Michilo. Therefore the result was obvious. And naturally, Ogu and Michilo also cared about their current status as counselors. In a situation where there wasn't enough evidence, they could only speak sullenly. I agree. I agree. Seeing this, Noah looked at the group of counselors calmly and said, Thank you for your insight. The group of counselors laughed embarrassedly and made all sorts of declarations of justice. With the situation so clear, the counselors naturally knew what to do. Now we announce that Noah Doria is acquitted on the spot due to insufficient evidence. Chapter 383. After the end of the trial, Noah walked out of the courtroom without the slightest reluctance. Along with him was Ajima. Thank you very much, Mr. Ajima. Noah still held some respect for Ajima, who was of the same generation as his grandfather and was also a close friend. In addition, Ajima had indeed helped Fairy Tale a lot, so it was only natural for him to thank him. I've really caused you a lot of trouble. I didn't help you at all. You relied on your own strength to make those counselors speechless. It's really Ajima's blessing to have a grandson like you. Ajima didn't seem to care much, but he seemed to enjoy Noah's respect. It was like meeting a polite child, and his face was peaceful. I have rarely seen such a smart and rational child like you in fairy tale. Ajima looked at Noah with great satisfaction. I always thought that the young people in Ajima's guild were very impulsive and needed our protection. Now it seems that we are just meddling in other people's business. I'm getting old. Please don't say that, Mr. Ajima, Noah quickly said. I also have impulsive moments, don't you know that? That's right, even that Joseph was killed by you. You were too harsh. Speaking until here, Ajima couldn't help but sigh. However, this time Joseph really did go too far. He can't blame others for being killed. Although I think it's a bit inappropriate for you to kill him, but seeing your performance today, I don't think you really did it out of impulse. You must have your own considerations, and Ajima must also think so he didn't blame you, right? Hearing this, Noah was silent. Noah didn't think that he was wrong to kill Joseph. After all, with Joseph's sinister personality, if he was allowed to live, he would definitely find trouble with Fairy Tale by any means possible. He might even cause Fairy Tale's members to encounter all kinds of dangers because of him. Whether it was from the perspective of protecting his companions, protecting his family, or from Joseph's actions, it was absolutely necessary to get rid of Joseph. However, Makarov and Ajima certainly didn't think so. No. It should be said that whether it was Makarov or Ajima, they clearly knew the threat that Joseph brought. However, even so, if they were given a choice, they wouldn't kill Joseph. It wasn't because Makarov and Ajima were too kind, but because they had a kind of tolerance for everyone and sincerely hoped that the other person would walk on the right path, even if the other person was evil. Although Noah inherited Makarov's magnanimity, his magnanimity wasn't as great as his magnanimity towards all humans. For example, for a child like the cursed child who was extremely pitiful, Noah would feel distressed and want to save them. Another example was the Holy Son of Heaven, who was somewhat naive but absolutely kind-hearted. Noah would also sincerely help him. But for a guy like Joseph whose heart was evil and rotten, Noah wouldn't casually show his tolerance. Of course, if it was only because Joseph was an evil person, Noah wouldn't have the leisure to specifically kill him. The main reason was that Joseph touched Noah's reverse scale and sent himself to death. Noah naturally wouldn't let him go. In general, Noah still wouldn't find fault with Makarov and Ajima's selfless tolerance, but he also had his own way of doing things. He could be tolerant, but he couldn't be truly selfless. No matter which side it was, it couldn't be said to be wrong. It was precisely because of this that Makarov didn't say anything to Noah. Ajima would also unconditionally help Noah like now, right? In short, little Noah, you also have your own considerations. Little Ma chose to believe you, and I will also choose to believe you. Although your way of doing things is a bit extreme, we don't think you're wrong. Ajima put his hands behind his back, raised his head, and looked out of the window and said earnestly, Little Pony and I are already old, so we won't be able to take care of Fairy Tale for much longer. As you know, there are many people in the council who don't like Fairy Tale. Once Little Pony and I retire, the guild can only be protected by you two. Little Ma was originally worried that there wasn't a suitable successor for the guild, but I think Little Ma should be relieved now. Ajima nodded with gratification. Compared to Lax's, Alusha, and Mishgang, I think you are the best successor for the guild. Little Noah, your own guild also needs to be protected by you, understand? Noah nodded heavily, and watched Ajima's back as he left. When Ajima's figure disappeared from Noah's sight, Noah suddenly spoke. If you continue to hide and secretly observe, I will have to suspect that you have other intentions. As soon as his voice fell, a clap sounded, as expected of an existence that can even kill the 10 St. Magus masters. This little trick can't fool you. Accompanied by such a sentence, two figures appeared out of thin air in front of Noah. Looking at the two figures, Noah raised his eyebrows. One of the newcomers was none other than Zeke Klein. The other person had long black hair, and was dressed flirtatiously in the inner court of the council. Noah remembered that the other party's name was Urusha. Looking at Zeke Klein and Urutia who appeared out of thin air in front of him, Noah frowned inwardly. Under the detection of his outstanding sensing ability, Noah discovered that not only Zeke Klein, but Urutia also seemed to be a little strange. She was completely different from Zeke Klein. If Noah had to put his finger on it, Kieran gave him a strange feeling. It was as if something was very wrong with him. Urudia, on the other hand, gave Noah a strange feeling, as if she was hiding something. With his outstanding sensing ability, Noah could sense these things, but he couldn't go any further. If even Noah's sensing ability couldn't sense anything more, it was enough to prove that Zeke Klein and Urudia weren't simple. Suppressing the suspicion in his heart, Noah looked straight at Zeke Klein and Urudia. What advice do the two esteemed counselors have for me? Don't tell me you're going to condemn me again? Don't be so nervous. Zeke Klein leisurely raised his hand and made a gesture of surrender. I don't mean any harm. We're different from those cowardly fellows, little brother Noah. Urusha smiled charmingly. She didn't do it on purpose, but her every move gave off the vibe of a mature woman. We're here because we want to see what kind of young man can kill the 10 St. Magus Grandmasters. We've met in the court, right? Didn't you see enough back then? Noah curled his lips and smiled. Besides, the one who killed Joseph wasn't me, but my companion Golden Wolf Bio. Even if you want to see, you should be looking at Bio, right? Such a brash tone, as expected of someone from fairy tale. Urudia shrugged. Well, although I don't hate it. Don't underestimate yourself, Sir Noah. Zeke Klein looked at Noah with a meaningful gaze. You're different from those old fogies. I feel that to be able to subdue a golden wolf that has the ability to kill one of the 10 great Saint Grand Magi, as its master, your abilities are definitely not simple. As he said this, Kieran bent down and gave Noah a noble salute. I believe we'll have many opportunities to meet in the future. Urudia also gave a slight salute and showed Noah a beautiful smile. I'll be looking forward to your guidance when the time comes. After leaving these two sentences behind, Zeke Klein and Urudia's figures blurred and disappeared in a flash. Looking at this scene, Noah's eyes flickered slightly. Although he couldn't tell where these two came from, just like what Zeke Klein and Urudia said, Noah also felt that his fate with them wouldn't be limited to this. Besides, Noah's intuition told him that the next time they met, they might not be able to chat like this without any tension. Chapter 384. When Noah returned to Fairy Tale, it was almost noon. After 4 to 5 days, Fairy Tale naturally still hadn't finished rebuilding. What was supposed to be Fairy Tale's guild building was currently empty, except for the walls that had been built around the outside. Even the ground had not been paved yet, and it was still a piece of yellow soil. In such a place, a temporary workplace similar to a bar had been built. Of course, although it was called a workplace, it was just a simple bar and commission board for the guild members to accept missions. In addition to the simple bar and commission board, temporary rough tables and chairs were neatly arranged on the yellow ground. The guild members were sitting there killing time. After all, Noah had carved all the runes used to build the defense system into the building materials. Now, he only needed to commission the workers to build it. There was no need for the guild members to be involved in the hard work. Fortunately, the sun wasn't too big today. Otherwise, the high mages of Fairy Tale would have been burnt to death if they were exposed to the sun without anything to cover them. However, as long as one was a magic shooter of Fairy Tale, they would not have any complaints about this. After all, to everyone, the existence of the guild was the most important. They already had a strong sense of belonging to the guild. As long as they could stay in Fairy Tale, they would be satisfied. Except for a few people. Noah, who was about to enter, stopped in his tracks when he heard a voice. What's going on? This shabby place? It was an extremely rude and vile voice. Laxus, who was wearing a fur coat as usual, was standing on the yellow ground. He looked around and did not hide his ridicule. I really can't take it anymore. I was actually reduced to this state by a mere phantom lord. Is this still the invincible Fairy Tale? Hearing Laxus's malicious words, the guild members all lowered their heads. They were angry but did not dare to say anything. Therefore, no one noticed that Laxus, whose face was full of ridicule, looked at the yellow ground, the simple bar, and the commission board of the guild. His eyes slightly trembled and flashed with anger. Useless. There are so many of you and you can't even protect a guild. As expected, it is because there are too many weaklings and trash in the guild. If I were the guild leader, I would definitely kick out all those people who only know how to eat. Not a single one would be left. Hearing this, Alessia could not help but stand up and look at Laxus with a stern face. Laxus, what do you mean by this? You still don't understand? Then let me tell you clearly. No one knew why Raxus was so angry, but it was rare for him to voice out his twisted thoughts in front of the entire guild. It's precisely because there are too many weaklings in this guild. That's why others have no qualms about finding trouble with us. If we were to clear out all the trash here and create the strongest guild, then how could those rascals have any ideas about fairy tale? Do you know what you are saying? Laxus. Lisanna, who was with Mira at the bar, could not help but speak up. Even the #1 guild in the past, Phantom Lord, had so many magic shooters. Our guild is already considered to have few people, and one of us can beat 10 of them. That is why that kind of guild disbanded, isn't it? Laxus said with a sneer. It is because there are too many trash in there, so many that even the weaklings here can beat 10 of them. That is why that kind of guild is now at the end of its road. Isn't this enough to make you understand that the strong are the ones who dominate everything? If I inherit the guild, then I will definitely clear out all the weaklings here. Perhaps the news of the guild's destruction had really stimulated Laxus. The agitated Laxus pointed at Lisanna and growled without hesitation. That's right, it is people like you. Lisanna's eyes widened and she lowered her head, her expression becoming gloomy. Laxus. Mira, who had been quietly listening to Laxus, suddenly raised her head and stared at Laxus. Her body flashed with a terrifying magic that made people's hearts tremble. Oh, how long has it been since I last saw you like this? Laxus raised an eyebrow. I thought that after 2 years, you are no different from those trash who only know how to put on an act. I didn't expect you to have such courage. Well, since you still have this level of ability, then I will reluctantly let you stay in the future. Laxus. Elisha could no longer bear it and glared at Laxus. That's too much. Lucy and Lebby bit their lips and tried hard not to show their disgust. Damn it. Gray clenched his fists and his eyes were filled with anger. You bastard. Naz rushed towards Laxus with a blazing flame burning in his hand. Against the sudden rise in temperature, he swung his fist in the direction of Laxus. I must teach you a lesson today. Hearing this, Raxus revealed a look of disdain. Before Naz's fist wrapped in flames was about to hit his body, a bolt of lightning flashed all over his body. He directly turned into a bolt of lightning and disappeared on the spot. Who dash? Naz followed the fist momentum and swung his flaming fist in the air, causing him to lose his balance and almost fall to the ground. Until this moment, a lightning bolt appeared behind Naz. Laxus re-emerged from it with his back facing Naz with a mocking look on his face. However, Laxus didn't notice it. When he just turned into lightning and avoided Naz's attack, a fist swung towards Naz's back as if it was a prophet. Raxus just happened to appear behind Naz, and appeared in front of the fist that was about to strike in advance as if he had foreseen it. Boom! In the next moment the fist, which was accompanied by a sharp gust of wind, landed heavily on Raxus' face, causing a muffled thud. Boo! Laxus, who was punched heavily in the face, directly spat out a muffled groan. His body was knocked away and hit the table and chair beside him. In a burst of crackling sounds, the table and chair there were smashed into pieces. He also fell into the fragments of the table and chair. The sudden change stunned everyone present. When they saw the full appearance of the fist's owner, many of them revealed a joyful expression. Noah, who appeared behind Nez out of nowhere, waved his hand casually as if he had just swatted a fly. He then turned his back to Naz. This punch is for Mira and Lisanna. As soon as the voice sounded, the shattered table and chair were blown away in a burst of lightning, exposing Laxus's figure. Bastard! Laxus, who was wrapped in lightning, looked at Noah furiously. Feeling the pain on his cheek, his expression suddenly became dangerous. You actually dare to attack me? Didn't you say that if you have power, you can do whatever you want? Noah glanced at Laxus. I'm different from a guy like you who treats the weak like dirt. Laxus, I think that the so-called duty of the strong is to protect the weak because the weak exist, the strong have a need to exist. If you only care about power, it's like an object that's too hard and easy to break. You said that if you inherit the guild, you will eliminate all the weak. Noah turned around and looked directly at Laxus. Then I'll tell you, Laxus, if I inherit the guild, I will never let it become the kind of guild that you dream of. You'd better be prepared. The atmosphere in the air suddenly became oppressive. Chapter 385. Everyone in Fairy Tale was staring at Noah and Raxus, who were confronting each other in the middle of the field. They all subconsciously held their breaths, not daring to even breathe. When Laxus heard Noah's words, his eyes widened. Then he slowly lowered his head and raised his hand to cover his forehead. After a while he suddenly laughed out loud. Ha ha. Ha ha. Ha 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 ha. Looking at Laxus, who suddenly laughed out loud, everyone present looked at each other in dismay. Only Noah stared at Laxus with a calm face, as if he already knew the reason why Laxus suddenly laughed out loud. Good. Good. That's great. This will be interesting. Laxus, who was laughing maniacally, raised his eyes and met Noah's calm gaze. Since you've already said this, then I'll take it as you declaring war on me. Let me see if you have the ability to make me understand. Ha 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 ha. Amidst a burst of excited, impassioned and battle-ready laughter, Laxus's body bloomed with golden lightning. His body turned into a bolt of lightning and swept into the sky, disappearing from the Fairy Tale Guild. Looking at Laxus, who turned into a bolt of lightning and disappeared into the horizon, the corners of Noah's mouth slowly curled up, a glint flashing across his eyes. Noah knew that after the destruction of Fairy Tale, Laxus's twisted heart had finally reached its limit. Just like when Fairy Tale had just been destroyed, the magic shooters in Fairy Tale were also depressed because of the collapse of their mental support. Laxus was affected in the same way. However, Laxus's influence was much greater than the others. This was because to Laxus, who did not interact much with the others in the guild and was in a state of cold war with his family, the guild was the last thing in his heart. It was the same as his younger brother, Noah, who treated the guild as his home. With the guild destroyed, Laxus suffered a much greater blow than the other members of Fairy Tale. Therefore, from this point of view, Noah and Laxus were indeed brothers. And now, because Noah had destroyed the Phantom Lord, what would Laxus do because of the same thing? Would he magnify his twisted desires because of his anger and directly attack those in the guild who he viewed as weak and trash? This was not impossible. Therefore, Noah did not hesitate to say those words. This was to fight for justice for Mira and Lysana, and also to shift the target of Laxus's venting onto himself. And because of this, Noah understood. Perhaps, the battle with Raxus that had been dragged on since he was a child could no longer be avoided. Big brother Noah. Lysana, who came to Noah's side, leaned her head on Noah's chest and reached out to hug Noah tightly, as if looking for someone to rely on. It seemed that the words Laxus had said in his agitation had caused her to feel a little down. Then was Mira affected in any way? Just as Noah was thinking this, Mira walked over and showed Noah the warmest smile, as if she could see through Noah's thoughts. She lightly shook her head, indicating that she was fine. Seeing this, Noah breathed a sigh of relief and patted Lysana's back, comforting her softly. Don't take that guy's words to heart. He was just too agitated because the guild was destroyed. If you're still angry, I'll help you punch him a few more times next time. Lysana's tears turned into laughter. She nodded and her expression became relieved. She leaned against Noah and did not leave, snuggling into Noah's embrace and enjoying the warmth of Noah's embrace. Damn it, Laxus, that guy. Naz clenched his fist and shouted. Next time, I'll definitely fight him to the death. He's really getting more and more overboard, Laxus. Gray was speechless. Undoubtedly, he wasn't like this in the past. Why would such a person be the Archmage of Fairy Tale? Lucy asked worriedly. Also, he said that he would inherit the guild. Could it be that he's going to become the leader of Fairy Tale? Isn't that a matter of course? Beside Lucy, Lebby shook her head with a heavy expression. Laxus is the grandson of the leader. If the leader abdicates, then Laxus will most likely inherit the guild. What? Lucy cried out in surprise. How could this be? It's not strange that you don't know about this. Elisha shook her head. Laxus and the leader's relationship has been in a tense state for a long time. People who don't know the situation wouldn't be able to tell that the two of them are family. Then, can that guy really inherit the guild? Lucy's face was full of disgust. I definitely don't want that kind of thing. Don't worry, Luchan. Lebby patted Lucy's shoulder and looked at Noah with hope in her eyes. Noah is also the grandson of the leader. Compared to Lax's, the relationship between the leader and Noah is much better. Moreover, Noah has never disappointed the leader. The leader has always been proud of Noah. If he wants to inherit the guild, the leader will definitely choose Noah. Really? Lucy looked at Noah in surprise and clenched her fist to encourage him. Then Noah, you have to do your best. Don't lose to Lax's. It's too early to talk about this. Noah laughed bitterly. Grandpa is still very healthy, and he won't be willing to part with us children. He won't retire in peace until the day his body collapses. It doesn't matter if it's the leader or Noah, as long as that Lax's doesn't inherit the guild. Lucy puffed up her cheeks. Even if he becomes the guild leader, no one will acknowledge him as someone who doesn't care about his companions. That's right. Noah looked up at the sky and muttered softly. Why can't you understand this logic, Lax's? Hearing Noah's muttering, Mira, Lisanna, Alusha, Lebby, Lucy and the others looked at each other and looked at Noah with a trace of heartache. Noah was in a state where he almost went to war with his own brother, and was viewed as a one-sided enemy. In fact, he must be feeling very conflicted. When they thought of this, the girls couldn't help but feel heartache in their hearts and remained silent. At this moment, outside the fairy tale guild, a figure silently appeared. It was a mysterious person who was covered in a thick windbreaker and had his face covered. He wore a hat, revealing only a pair of eyes, and carried a few strange-looking staffs on his back. Staring fixedly at Noah, who was surrounded by a group of young ladies, the mysterious man's eyes were filled with astonishment, surprise, and surprise. More than that, there was a nostalgia that couldn't be erased. Not long after, the mysterious person turned into a phantom and disappeared on the spot. At this moment, Noah seemed to have felt something and turned his head to look in the direction of the mysterious person. His eyes were filled with doubt and confusion. Night came quietly. Opening the door to her house, she tugged at Noah's hand and pulled him in with a helpless look on his face. Big brother Noah, come in quickly. Why are you so excited? Noah shook his head helplessly. It's not the first time I'm here. Do you have to be like this? But you haven't been here for so many years. Lisanna couldn't hide her good mood. My room is completely different from before. I'll take you to see it later. Okay. Noah replied weakly. Behind Noah's back, Mira watched all of this with a smile and walked in. Elfman has work, so he won't be back tonight. You can sleep in his room. Elfman went out to work? Noah paused for a moment before coming to a realization. In that case, wouldn't there be only one man and two women left tonight? Chapter 386. Ever since the fairy tale guild building was destroyed, Noah had no home to return to. No, to be more precise, Noah had no place to stay. This was to be expected. After all, the fairy tale guild was Noah's home. This was not just a matter of belonging, but also a matter of living a normal life. Don't forget, Noah lived in the fairy tale guild. This time the fairy tale guild was destroyed, and Noah had completely lost his place to live. Until the new guild was completed, he could be considered homeless. Therefore, during this period of time, Noah had been living in the guild that had no roof and was only left with a piece of yellow soil. This was not a big deal. Noah had once cultivated outside for 4 years. Deep in the mountains and forests. Wild mountains and forests. Where had he not lived before? Noah had lived in worse environments than this. Thus, in a way that was equivalent to camping, Noah lived in the guild building that had not yet been completed. This matter until today was finally discovered by Mira and Lisanna. Because they had to clean up the table and chairs that Noah had smashed when he punched Lax's, Mira and Lisanna stayed a little longer and went outside to buy new tables and chairs. In the end, Noah, who did not know about this matter, thought that Mira and Lisanna had already returned, and leaned against the wall that had already been completed. He directly sat on the ground and fell asleep. Thus, Mira and Lisanna, who had returned to the guild, smoothly discovered this scene. Unsurprisingly, the two girls violently shook Noah awake, and with an extremely angry expression, they scolded Noah, saying something about not taking care of himself and so on. Then there was no then. Mira and Lisanna, who could not bear to see Noah sleeping in the wilderness, did not hesitate to drag Noah out of the guild building and bring him back to their home. Helpless, Noah had no choice but to comply. However, Noah did not expect that. Elfman was not at home. leaving only Noah, Mira, and Lisa-Anna in the house. This was not a very good situation. In the past it wouldn't have mattered. But now that he knew how Mira and Lisa-Anna felt about him, Noah could no longer stay under the same roof as the two beautiful girls. One had to know that the current Mira was as gentle as a saintess. Every action of hers affected Noah's heart. Lisa-Anna had long since made love to Noah. How could Noah remain calm when surrounded by these two girls? If it was only Lisa-Anna or Mira, then Noah wouldn't be like this. But there were two of them at once. If something went wrong and he couldn't control himself, he would be in deep trouble. Noah, who had fully tasted the taste of meat, was not confident that he could be the same as before. He could not guarantee that he could stay in the same dorm as Julie and Lilith. Even when he slept on the same bed, he would not be able to control himself. At that moment, Noah could only suppress his uneasiness. He laughed dryly and said to Mira and Lisa-Anna, "Then I'll sleep in Elfman's room tonight. That's it, good night." With that said, Noah wanted to escape to Elfman's room. However, just as Noah started to move, Lisa-Anna grabbed Noah's hand and forcefully pulled Noah back. "It's still so early." Lisa-Anna's face was full of dissatisfaction. "I still want to show you my room. I'm afraid that after entering your room, I won't be able to bear to come out, girl." If that's the case, Noah bitterly smiled in his heart. Also, because of the conflict with Laxus, you didn't have time to eat dinner. That won't do. Mira put one hand on her waist and cutely puffed up her cheeks as she scolded. "You have to take good care of your body. Wait here for a moment, I'll go make dinner for you." After saying that, Mira turned and walked into the kitchen. Big brother Noah. When Mira walked into the kitchen, Lisa-Anna hugged Noah tightly and took a deep breath as if she wanted to smell Noah's body scent. Then she smiled sweetly. "Do you want to take a look at my room?" Feeling Lisa-Anna's beautiful figure and the soft touch of her plump breasts, Noah glanced at Mira, who was humming in the kitchen and cooking something. He let out a sigh of relief and hugged Lisa-Anna, moving his mouth close to her ear and gently blowing into it. "Is it really just taking a look at your room?" Hearing such flirtatious words and feeling the hot breath on her ear, Lisa-Anna blushed and shyly looked up. Her eyes were suddenly wet. "Big brother Noah, if you want to do something else, that's fine too." "Idiot." Noah's hand caressed Lisa-Anna's soft and slender waist as he gently bit her earlobe. "Then your sister will definitely find out. I'll hold back, and not let big sister Mira find out." Lisa-Anna seemed to miss Noah's embrace very much. She buried her head tightly in Noah's chest and spat out hot words. I haven't showered yet. Big brother Noah, let's go in together." Without a doubt, Noah's heart was moved. Even Lisa-Anna missed Noah's embrace. As a man, Noah would definitely miss Lisa-Anna's soft and delicate body even more. If possible, Noah really wanted to do the same thing as that night, tightly entwining with the beautiful girl in his arms. Thinking of this, Noah's heart also surged with a trace of warmth. Then just as the man and woman were about to fall into a state where they couldn't extricate themselves and couldn't leave each other, a faintly smiling voice sounded from the side. "I was wondering why you were suddenly silent. So you were whispering something that others can't hear?" Noah and Lisa-Anna were both startled. They jumped away reflexively and put some distance between them. They looked at the source of the voice and saw Mira looking at her grown children. Mira looked like she was looking at her grown-up children. Mira. Noah awkwardly turned his head away. Hee. Lisa-Anna seemed to be a little shy, but her mischievous personality didn't diminish as she teased Noah. "The shy big brother Noah is also very cute. What are you talking about?" Noah pretended to be angry, causing Lisa-Anna to giggle. She ran to Elfman's room as if she was escaping, leaving only this sentence behind. "I'll go help big brother Noah tidy up his room." Looking at the escaping Lisa-Anna, Noah helplessly smiled. "Aya." It was only at this moment that Mira stretched out a finger and tapped her smooth chin. "Did I disturb you too?" Seeing Mira's natural expression, Noah bitterly smiled. "Mira, are you also going to tease me?" "Because..." Mira came in front of Noah and looked up at Noah. Her gentle eyes met Noah's gaze, and there were slight ripples in them. "Noah only does bad things to Lisa-Anna." This sentence caused Noah's heart to beat faster. This expression, this sentence, it wasn't hard to guess what Mira meant. "Mira, Noah couldn't help but reach out his hand to Mira. Myra's eyes rippled at almost the same time. Instead of retreating, she moved forward and snuggled into Noah's embrace. She lifted her chin slightly and closed her eyes. At this time, if Noah still didn't know what to do, then he wouldn't be a man. Noah took Myra's lips as she let out a soft whimper. Chirp. Tsk. Mira didn't know if it was because she didn't want to fall behind Lysana, but she opened her lips and welcomed Noah's tongue into her mouth. She stuck out her sweet little tongue and tangled it with Noah's. After a long while, the two wet lips parted. Just now you said you wanted to bathe together, right? Mira looked at Noah's face without blinking. Her pretty face was slightly flushed, and her hands were crossed in front of her chest, making her look even more voluptuous than Lysana's. If Noah wants, I can do it too. Noah couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. Ha. Mira tilted her head and looked at Noah with her beautiful eyes. Her red lips moved slightly, and the words that came out of her mouth made Noah's heart waver. Do you want to see? My body. Do you want to see? This could basically be considered as a useless sentence. Even if it was Noah, how could he not want to see? Chapter 387. Noah had always thought that his self-control was very good. After all, since he was a child, Noah had worked hard to learn to control his emotions at any time in order to not let the overly strong magic power go out of control with his emotions. He became extremely good at this aspect. Later, the ability to not lose control when sharing a bed with Julie and Lilith was mostly thanks to this ability that had been cultivated since childhood. But now, Noah found that his ability to control his emotions was really not that great. Because even if he was good at controlling his emotions, after hearing Myra's words that were enough to make any man lose control, he still couldn't help but feel his heart beating faster, and even his heart was shaken. Do you want to see? Mira, on the other hand, seemed to be doing it on purpose. Her eyes were misty as she repeated the words that made Noah waver. My body. Me. Mira. Seeing that Mira was still trying to show a gentle smile even though her face was blushing, Noah's voice became a little dry. For a moment he didn't know what to say. Hee. In this regard, Mira laughed innocently like a prank. Her eyes were fixed on Noah, but her hands were slightly trembling as she put them on the back of her clothes. The next moment, the sound of a zipper was heard. With the sound of cloth friction reverberating, Noah watched the princess dress on Mira slide down from her body, forming a circle with Mira as the center, and fell to the cold ground. Noah only felt that his head had become muddled. Then the princess dress slid down from Myra's body. A large area of snow-white skin was exposed in front of his eyes, making Noah's already messy head even more confused. At this moment, Noah just wanted to exclaim in amazement, because the scene in front of his eyes was too beautiful. It was a beauty that could not be described as a work of art. The scene in front of Noah's eyes. It was so amazing that people couldn't help but marvel. It was as if the curves were specially carved. Between the curves, it seemed that there was something added on it that could definitely attract people's eyes and hearts, making people unable to look away. Noah believed that if it was someone else, even if it was a woman like Mira, they would definitely be attracted by the beautiful body in front of him. Her skin was not as white as snow, but it was enough to be called as white as pearls. Instead of saying that her figure was curvy, it was more appropriate to say that it was extremely enchanting. Undoubtedly, she was a gentle and kind saintess that made people unable to have the slightest ambiguity. Such an existence. When she stripped the last cover on her body, not only did she not lose the sacred and inviolable sense of holiness, but there was also an additional attraction that could make anyone to go crazy. Unsurprisingly, Noah's attention was captured by Myra's figure, and he was completely absent-minded. Noah really didn't expect that Mira would actually take off all her clothes in front of him and become really naked. And it seemed that even Mira herself didn't believe that she would do such a bold thing. Her pretty face was flushed, and her slender arms were also blocking her chest, covering the holy mound that men yearned for. Her delicate body was also trembling slightly. Mira didn't know that although this could serve as a little cover, it made her charm even easier to make people go crazy. Because that pair of extremely plump and round breasts were not something that Myra's pair of slender arms could block. In addition to being able to cover up that captivating red, it made her even more obvious that pair of great breasts on her body. Noah had always thought that Lysana's figure was already considered good. After all, Lysana's figure was also very plump. But who knew that compared to Mira, it was still a little worse. And this difference lay in that pair of plump breasts. From Noah's point of view, Myra's chest was at least 2 times larger than Lysana's. It was very likely that it was even 3 times larger. It made people's blood boil. Therefore, Noah almost uncontrollably reached out his hand towards that sacred place. Noticing Noah's actions, Myra's delicate body trembled. But her eyes never left Noah's face. Although her pretty face was getting redder and redder, her expression was always extremely gentle, and it was getting more and more intense. It turned out that Mira and Lysana were indeed sisters. Just like how Lysana would feel shy in front of Noah. But she was still unwilling to reject Noah and boldly showed her beauty to Noah. Mira certainly knew the consequences of not rejecting Noah's outstretched hand. She was definitely very shy and timid in her heart, but she still didn't choose to escape. Instead, she slowly let go of the trembling hand that was blocking her chest, revealing that round longing in front of Noah without missing a single bit. Noah, who clearly knew Myra's feelings, was extremely moved. He stroked his hand on that yearning that couldn't be refused as long as it was a man. What entered his hand was a full smoothness, followed by an indescribable softness. Noah was already quite familiar with this kind of softness, but he still couldn't help but be moved at this time. Thus, Noah subconsciously began to gently knead. Myra's pretty face became redder and redder, and her eyes became more and more blurry. She began to pant lightly, exhaling scorching hot breaths. Her delicate body trembled uncontrollably with Noah's actions. She raised her hand without resistance, puffed out her chest, and offered her most beautiful place to Noah for him to play with as he pleased. Unknowingly, the two's bodies began to draw closer, and their heads also moved closer to each other, tasting each other's lips. The sound of panting, the sound of sucking. Their flirtatious voices reverberated under the eaves of the house that was neither too big nor too small. Not long after, even Noah's clothes fell to the ground at some point. In the next second, a suppressed groan of pain rang out in the hall, followed by a series of muffled groans. The man and woman who were immersed in each other's embrace had long forgotten. They weren't the only ones under the eaves. Sigh. In Elfman's room, Lysana leaned against the door, listening to the sound of panting and the crisp sounds of collisions from outside the door. She sighed unhappily. Even big sister Mira has become that bad guy's thing? Looks like us sisters can only take advantage of that bad guy. Lysana sighed faintly, and even started to sulk. Damn big brother Noah, he's such a playboy. Forget about big sister Mira. But if he wants to find another woman from who knows where, he'll have to get through me first. Otherwise, heh. This night was especially long. It wasn't only for the man and woman who were immersed in each other's embrace, but also for the woman who was directly entangled in the hall. It was the same for the girl who could only hide in the room and listen to the sounds that constantly tortured her nerves. Everyone. The next day, when Mira returned to the bar counter of Fairy Tale, she had transformed back into the gentle signboard girl. Her face was glowing as she enthusiastically waved at everyone in the guild. Work. Do your best. Oh, the magic shooters who were planning to accept the commission and join the team to rebuild the guild cheered excitedly under the cheerful support of the popular masked girl, as if they had been injected with chicken blood. No one knew that the famous masked girl and signature girl of Fairy Tale, who still seemed to belong to everyone, had in fact become the possession of only one person last night without anyone knowing. If they knew, the male archmages who were enthusiastically responding to Myra's greetings wouldn't be as excited as they were now. Instead, they would even have thoughts of committing suicide. Sitting next to Noah, Lebby, who was asking Noah about runic script, asked curiously. It feels like Myra's mood is a lot better than before. Did something good happen? Is that so? Noah laughed dryly. Something good should have happened, right? But Mira is very gentle. To Mira, everyone's good news is her good news. That's why she's always in a good mood. Today she's even better than before, Rebby said with a puzzled expression. I've only seen Mira this happy once when you came back. Could it be that it has something to do with you this time? Noah was speechless. Chapter 388. It had to be said that a woman's intuition was truly terrifying. Even though it was only a guess, Lebby had guessed the reason why Mira was in such a good mood. Not only is Mira in a good mood, but she has also become prettier. Lebby tilted her head and looked at Mira suspiciously before shifting her gaze in another direction. Compared to Mira, that person's mood seems to be the exact opposite. She seems to be in a much worse mood than before. Hearing this, Noah followed Lebby's gaze and the corner of his eyes twitched. He saw Lysana, who was holding a tray and delivering drinks to her companions who were rebuilding the guild. Not only did she not have her usual cute smile, but she also seemed to be in a bad mood. She would occasionally turn her gaze in Myra's direction and faintly sigh. When she turned her gaze to Noah, she would immediately turn her head away in a huff. Anyone with a discerning eye could tell that she was throwing a tantrum. Lebby, who saw this scene, glanced at Noah mockingly. It seems that this person's bad mood has something to do with you. You really have it hard. Noah rolled his eyes at Lebby, but he couldn't find the words to refute her. Who asked Noah to be so distracted by Mira last night that he forgot about Lysana's existence? When he thought of how he had fallen asleep on the dining table in the hall last night with Mira in his arms and woke up in the same position in the morning, the first thing he saw was Lysana's resentful expression and eyes, as well as the faintly visible dark circles under her eyes. Noah couldn't wait to find a hole to hide in. Come to think of it, last night was indeed ridiculous. In the presence of a third party, and this person was also his girlfriend who had an intimate relationship with him. Not only did he spend an entire night with someone else's sister in someone else's house, but when he woke up, the first thing he saw was that he was hugging someone else's sister and lying naked in front of her. No matter how one looked at it, this seemed like a situation that would lead to bloodshed, right? Although it didn't cause any bloodshed in the end, Noah felt rather awkward after being stared at by Mira the entire morning with a blissful expression and Lysana the entire morning with a hateful gaze. Lebby seemed to have more or less guessed something. That was why she was making fun of Noah. Embarrassed, Noah could only change the topic. By the way, why don't I see Alusha, Naz, Gray, Lucy and hubby? You mean them? Lebby's attention was successfully diverted. She raised her spirits and laughed. I heard that they just formed a team. They should be working together now, right? They formed a team? Noah asked in surprise. Naz and Gray? And Alusha? Noah couldn't help but be surprised. This combination was really strange. Naz and Gray were sworn enemies. They would fight every other day, and the quarrel never stopped. Just like Mira and Alusha in the past, it was also like their magic. Ice and fire were incompatible. For these two people to form a team together, it was not an ordinary kind of strange thing. Needless to say, Alusha, Naz and Gray were afraid of Alusha since they were young. For them, forming a team with Alusha shouldn't be better than forming a team with a gorilla, right? And Lujin is also in that team. Lebby sighed. I know why you're surprised, but Alusha, Naz, Gray, and Lujin have been working together recently, so they just formed a team. Now that you mention it, it seems to be true. Noah scratched his cheek. Well, this is also a good thing. I hope those people can get along well. Get along well. Lebby pondered for a moment, and in the next second, she immediately shook her head with sweat all over her forehead. No, absolutely impossible. Ha ha. Noah couldn't help but laugh. This strange combination, it was most likely impossible for them to get along well. They would definitely quarrel once every 2 or 3 days, right? However, that was also Alusha, Naz and Gray's style. It would definitely be very pleasant. As for Lucy, Noah wasn't very familiar with her. But he felt that this girl was also an existence full of infinite possibilities. If she joined Alusha, Naz, and Gray, it should also have some kind of catalytic effect and create different sparks, right? At least Noah believed so. Noah and Lebby, who were chatting happily, didn't notice that around them, several pairs of eyes had been staring at them fiercely, full of resentment, dissatisfaction, and indignation. Is it Lebby this time? Lysana shouted angrily. Big brother Noah is really a playboy. Well, well, Mira comforted Lysana with a smile. Although the atmosphere seems to be good, Lysana should be able to tell that Noah and Lebby don't have that kind of feeling, right? Not now doesn't mean that they won't in the future. Lysana retorted. It's not hard to cultivate feelings, especially for big brother Noah. That's true. Mira smiled bitterly, looking at Noah with an extremely gentle gaze. We are well aware of how attractive that man is. Isn't that so? Lysana puffed out her cheeks and looked in another direction. Jet and Troy are also having a hard time. Mira followed her line of sight and saw Jet and Troy hiding in a corner, staring at Noah and Lebby, who were chatting with each other. Tears flowed down their cheeks as they bit on a handkerchief in their hands. Mira couldn't help but smile. I can't watch this anymore. Lysana couldn't take it anymore and jumped out. Big sister Mira and I are here already. Big brother Noah, you definitely won't be able to touch Lebby. With that said, Lysana was about to walk in the direction of Noah, but her head suddenly felt a little dizzy. Feeling her vision blur, Lysana let out a strange cry. Then, an indescribable drowsiness rushed into her mind. It wasn't just Lysana. Even Mira felt a little sleepy all of a sudden. She held her head and leaned on the bar counter. Noah, who was talking to Lebby, raised his head as if he sensed something and furrowed his brows. Is this a sleeping spell? That's right. Someone was using a spell that could cause people to fall into a deep sleep. This was because Noah could feel that the air of the entire fairy tale guild was filled with a magical power, causing waves of undulations, causing those who were affected by this invisible undulation to feel sleepy. What's wrong? Seeing Noah's furrowed brows, Lebby only had time to say this before her eyelids began to close. In the entire fairy tale except for Noah, everyone was affected by the sleeping magic. Furthermore, seeing that no one was able to escape the effects of the spell, the sleeping spell wasn't just any ordinary spell. The person casting the sleeping spell was definitely not an ordinary person. If not for the fact that he didn't sense any malicious intent, Noah would have acted long ago. Of course, the reason he didn't act wasn't just because Noah didn't sense any malicious intent. It was also because the magical energy that permeated the entire guild seemed to have intentionally bypassed Noah. In other words, Noah wasn't among the targets of the sleeping spell. This feeling. In the direction of the bar, Mira seemed to know what was going on and revealed a relieved expression. She hugged Lysana as she lay on the bar and fell into a deep sleep. Mr. Gang. Lebby seemed to know who the sleeping spell was as well. After saying this name, her eyelids closed and she fell towards Noah's direction. Noah instinctively hugged the upside-down Lebby and glanced at Mira and Lysana, who were sleeping soundly at the bar. He then looked around. He saw that everyone in the guild had fallen to the ground and had fallen into a deep sleep. Noah furrowed his brows as he looked in the direction of the guild gate with narrowed eyes. It's time to come out, right? As soon as he said this, a gust of wind blew in the direction of the entrance. Not long after, a figure silently appeared there. The newcomer was wearing a windbreaker and was dressed strangely. On his back were a few strangely shaped staffs, and he wore a hat and a mask. Noah, with his senses fully activated, found that he couldn't detect any magical energy from the newcomer, and couldn't help but become cautious. Chapter 389. Looking at the mysterious person slowly walking into the guild, Noah remembered the name that Lebby, who was in his arms, had mentioned before she fell asleep. Mishgang? He's Mishgang? In addition to Kildas, there was one of the 3 S-rank sorcerers in Fairy Tale, who was known as the strongest backup sorcerers, Mishgang. Unlike Alusha, who often interacted with his companions in the guild, and Laxus, who did not have a good relationship with his companions, this S-rank sorcerer named Mishgang was mysterious. Noah heard that ever since Mishgang joined Fairy Tale, he would use sleep magic every time he went to the guild, making everyone in the guild fall into a deep sleep, except for showing his face once during the S-rank magic shooter advancement exam. Thus, Noah heard that apart from Makarov, no one in Fairy Tale had seen Mishgang before. This enigmatic sorcerer, until now, Noah realized that it was not just for show. Too mysterious. Even with Noah's outstanding senses, he could not sense even a trace of mana from Mishgang. It was obvious that Mishgang was not as simple as he looked. Of course, Noah did not think that there was another possibility that he could not sense mana from Mishgang. Mishgang had no mana at all. However, to be able to become the S-rank magic shooter of the Fairy Tale and use such a powerful sleep spell, how could there not be any magic on her body? Because of this point of view, Noah subconsciously ruled out this possibility, but he did not expect that this was the correct answer. Noah, who did not know this, found it strange that Mishgang deliberately avoided using sleep magic on him. Although Noah felt that this level of sleep magic was not enough to affect him, Mishgang clearly had a purpose for doing so. Mishgang was here for Noah. It was that simple. However, for some reason, Noah felt that Mishgang's aura was a little familiar. While he was suspicious, Noah also cast his gaze on Mishgang and spoke first. Are you Mishgang? Although I heard rumors, I did not expect that you would actually hypnotize everyone in the guild when you appeared. What's the point of that? After hearing Noah's words, Mr. Gang stopped in his tracks. After a moment of silence, he uttered these words. Because my appearance is not suitable for others to know. As he said this, Mishgang suddenly reached out and removed his headscarf and face cloth, revealing his true appearance that no one knew about to Noah. Noah was stunned at first, but when he saw Mishgang's appearance, his pupils shrank. Noah had seen that face a few days ago. Short blue hair, a familiar face, and a sword-shaped tattoo above and below one eye. It was none other than Zeke Klein. No, it wasn't Zeke. You, Noah said in shock. You are Jalal? Noah finally remembered. That's right, Mishgang's aura was exactly the same as Jalal's aura that he had encountered in the forest. The most mysterious S-rank sorcerer in the history of fairy tale was the same Jalal that Noah had met in the forest when he was young. The same Jalal who had been running around in order to stop an unknown super subspace magic called Anima. Call me Mishgang. The former friend showed a gentle smile to Noah. To be honest, if you can call me that, it will be a lot more convenient for me. You came to fairy tale? Noah looked at Jalal with surprise. No, it should be Mishgang. Don't you need to stop that anima thing? I am now wandering around the world, stopping the activation of anima everywhere. Mishgang stopped smiling, and his expression more or less carried a hint of helplessness. However, traveling everywhere also means that I need to have sufficient travel expenses. For the sake of living, I can only find a guild to join and work while traveling. Because you're in fairy tale, I thought of coming here, but after I arrived I found out that you had already left. Noah had left fairy tale for a full 6 years. Mr. Gang had probably joined fairy tale in the past 6 years, but Noah was coincidentally not in the guild, so they hadn't bumped into each other. Now that they had finally met, it was only now that they had finally met. It's not easy for you. Knowing that Mishgang was the Jalal that he had met when he was young, Noah's mood became better, but he quickly thought of something and hurriedly spoke. What about Wendy? Where did Wendy go? When they parted ways with Mishgang, Noah left Wendy in Jalal's care. Now Mishgang had joined fairy tale and he had joined fairy tale for quite some time. Then where was Wendy? Could it be that an accident had happened? Don't worry, nothing happened to Wendy. Sensing that Noah's face was gradually darkening, Mishgang quickly understood what Noah was thinking and hurriedly spoke. I put Wendy in a good place and she is now living there. Put Wendy in another place. Noah frowned. Why? When I was bringing Wendy to look for Grandine, I encountered Anima. Mishgang sighed. Because it would cause a great disaster if it was allowed to activate, so in order to stop it, I could only put Wendy in a safe place. After all, it would be too dangerous for Wendy to get close to the anima. Is that so? Noah's brows relaxed little by little. Then where's Wendy now? I put Wendy in a guild, Mishgang answered honestly. That guild is called Cat Shelter. Wendy is in Cat Shelter? Noah sighed in relief. Good, it's not a hard place to find. Although it hadn't been long since he returned to this world, Noah had enough information about this time period, including some of the more famous guilds. Cat Shelter was one of them. Knowing that Wendy was in Cat Shelter, Noah was slightly relieved. Then, he stared at Mishgang's face and hesitated for a moment before speaking. Actually, I met a guy called Kieran in the council. That guy looks exactly like you. Mr. Gang's expression froze, and his eyes became uncertain. Seeing this, Noah was sure that Mishgang knew about Kieran's existence. If there's a reason that you can't explain, it's fine if you don't say it. Noah looked at his childhood friend in front of him and said, but as long as it's within your means, give me some information. I'm a little concerned about that guy. You're right to be concerned about him, Mishgang said in a deep voice. I know about Kieran's existence as well. He's not a simple person. Mishgang hesitated for a moment, then seemed to give up on something and said to Noah, if I'm not wrong, Kieran must be related to Jalal. Jalal? Noah was completely stunned. Jalal? Wasn't that Mishgang? You might be surprised, but I still have to tell you. Mishgang looked at Noah solemnly and said, Actually, there's another person who looks exactly like me and Kieran. His name is Jalal. Hearing this, even Noah felt that he couldn't react. There was another person who looked exactly like him? Could it be that that face was very popular in this world? Chapter 390. Noah looked at Mr. Gang's back as he walked away from Fairy Tale. Only when Mr. Gang's figure disappeared from his sight did he look down at his hand. There was a piece of paper in his hand. There was an address written on it. It was a set of coordinates on the ocean. Paradise Tower? That was the name of the location that Mr. Gang had given Noah. According to Mr. Gang, it was a place where people were treated like slaves. It was like hell. The so-called Jalal that Mr. Gang had mentioned was in the Paradise Tower. For some reason, Mr. Gang seemed to be very concerned about this person called Jalal. He had specifically investigated this matter, and the results of his investigation were the coordinates in Noah's hand and the name of the Paradise Tower. Why would Jalal be in a hell where people were treated like slaves? Why would Mr. Gang use the name Jalal to introduce himself when he was young? Why would Mr. Gang care about Jalal so much? Why would Mr. Gang, Jalal, and even Kieran look exactly the same? Mr. Gang did not say any of this. However, Mishgang said so. If you care about Kieran, it's best to start investigating this Jalal. The relationship between the two of them is definitely not ordinary. I feel that there is a very important connection between the two of them. However, I've been investigating too little, so I can only vaguely make some judgments. After that, Mr. Gang left a message for Kieran. I really have nothing to do with this Jalal. I only know of his existence. If you want to investigate him, then go to the Paradise Tower. However, don't bring Alusha along. It's best if you don't tell Alusha about this. After saying this, Mr. Gang left, leaving Noah with the coordinates of the Paradise Tower. Noah had no interest in Jalal, Kirkine, or the Paradise Tower. The reason why Noah asked about Mr. Gang was because the two looked too similar. Even their auras were vaguely similar. Moreover, he had a bad premonition in his heart, which was why Noah asked about it. As mentioned before, Noah's intuition was very accurate. That was why Noah said that he cared about Kieran. Now, Noah finally understood why he cared about this matter. Because of Alusha. He had a bad premonition before, but when Mishgang mentioned Alusha, it rose to the top. Connecting the dots, Noah felt that Alusha definitely had some sort of relationship with that Jalal or the Paradise Tower, and it was a very bad one at that. That was why his intuition had suddenly reacted to Kieran. Tightly holding the paper in his hand, Noah murmured, "Looks like there's a need to investigate." As soon as he said this, a shy voice sounded from Noah's arms. "No matter what you want to investigate, I'll help you. But before that, can you let go of me?" Noah was slightly startled. He lowered his head reflexively and looked at his arms. Then he saw her. She looked at Lebby, who had her hand on her chest and her petite body was twisting slightly. She seemed to be a little uncomfortable, and her face was flushed red with shyness. At this moment, Noah was tightly hugging Lebby's extremely slender waist, pressing her into his embrace. Their bodies were tightly pressed together, and Noah could even faintly feel the pair of small softness and Lebby's drumming heartbeat. Feeling Lebby's rapidly beating heart as if it wanted to jump out of her chest, Noah finally reacted. However, before he could let go, a low voice sounded from behind Noah. "How long do you plan on hugging her?" "Oh, yeah, brother. Noah shuddered and abruptly let go of Lebby. He jumped up and distanced himself from Lebby. Yes. I'm sorry. I didn't do it on purpose. I know. I still have memories before I fell asleep. I still remember falling in your direction before I fell asleep." Lebby also tidied her clothes and smiled awkwardly. "Noah must have hugged me to prevent me from falling to the ground, right?" Hearing this, Noah could not help but laugh dryly. Rather than saying that he hugged Lebby to prevent her from falling to the ground, it was more accurate to say that because of the appearance of Mr. Gang and the information it brought, Noah had long forgotten that Lebby was still in his arms. Furthermore, the reason he hugged Lebby was because he saw Lebby leaning towards him. Although Noah did have a gentle side, this time, he did not hug Lebby because he had such a considerate intention. It was truly a sin. "Brother Noah, On the other side, Lysana looked at Noah with a fake smile. Although I can roughly guess what happened, I still want to ask. You didn't do it on purpose, right? No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Noah shook his head like a rattledrum. I definitely didn't do it on purpose. Really? Lysana looked at Noah suspiciously and said unwillingly. Then I'll forgive you. Noah laughed bitterly. Had it been her usual self, she wouldn't have shown such obvious suspicion even if she didn't have absolute trust in Noah's words. Obviously, because of what happened last night with Mira, Lysana was agitated. Don't be awkward. At that moment, Noah hugged her from behind and rested his chin on her shoulder as he said softly, Don't worry. I know it's my fault, and I also know that Lysana will definitely forgive me. I also know that you don't mind that I have Mira, but you feel bad, right? Perhaps it was because of Noah's hug, Lysana finally stopped being awkward and revealed her inner thoughts. I'm not as pretty as Sister Mira, and I'm not as gentle as her. Now that brother Noah has a better sister Mira, I don't know if he'll forget me. You're such an idiot. How many years have you known me? Am I that kind of person? Noah gently bit Lysana's earlobe. If you say something like that again next time, I'll have to punish you. All right, I won't say it again. Lysana playfully stuck out her tongue and gave her body to Noah. She leaned into Noah's embrace, her face finally showing her usual cheerfulness. Although she didn't receive a pledge of eternal love from Noah, nor did she receive any sweet nothings from Noah, Lysana, who understood Noah, knew that such words were equivalent to a promise from Noah. Noah was indirectly telling her that he would never forget her. That made the little bit of uneasiness in her heart disappear, leaving behind only the warmth and happiness of a lover. Immersed in the warmth, the two of them had long forgotten where they were. Era. Before long, Myra's helpless voice sounded in their ears. You two, can you do this kind of thing when we get back home? Noah and Lysana were both startled. They raised their heads and looked around, only to discover that at some point, everyone in the guild had woken up and surrounded them. You really surprised me. Kana looked at Noah with a teasing gaze. I didn't expect that not only Mira but Lysana as well? Noah! Levi covered her mouth with a look of surprise. You plan to date both Mira and Lysana at the same time? Damn it. Jet and Troy were even more enraged. It's not just Levi, you even hugged Lysana, you hugging maniac. Yes. Yeah. The male sorcerers in the guild all cried out in resentment. You bastard, you're so enviable. You're too bold. The female sorcerers also laughed out loud. Since Mira, Lysana, and Levi all have a chance, Noah, why don't you give us a chance too? Levi was stunned and hurriedly clarified. No, it has nothing to do with me. As she said that, Levi seemed to recall Noah's hug just now. Her cheeks turned red again, and she kept sneaking glances in Noah's direction. Seeing this scene, Jet and Troy burst into tears. Chapter 391. The sun was setting in the west and the sky was filled with the glow of the sunset. With the help of the sparse light, Noah, who was holding a box in his hand, pushed aside the bushes and passed through the trees. After passing through a small path, the scene in front of him began to open up. Not long after, an open space with a clear river appeared in front of Noah. And on the bank of the river, a girl with eye-catching crimson long hair was waiting there. Ha ha ha! Amidst the awe-inspiring shouts, Elisha, who was wearing her usual ice-cold armor, held a knight's sword in one hand. Like a valkyrie descending from the sky, she nimbly ran back and forth on the bank of the river while waving the knight's sword in her hand at an extremely fast speed, bringing about waves of sword light. Clang, clang, clang. The crisp sound of the sword striking the air was like the sharp sound of something breaking through the air. Looking at Elisha's ghostly figure and the waves of sword light that flashed one after another, Noah felt as if he was looking at Elisha, who was diligently practicing her swordsmanship on the bank of the river when she was young. He couldn't help but let out a gentle smile. In the blink of an eye, so many years had passed. Whether it was Noah or Elisha, they had both grown up. Unlike the Elisha who could only use her swordsmanship in a clumsy way to grow up, the current Elisha's swordsmanship had already reached the acme of perfection. It was far from what the past could compare to. Moreover, Elisha was no longer the novice magic shooter, who couldn't even obtain a work permit, and could only stay in the guild to temporarily hone her magic. Instead, she was a true powerhouse. She had obtained the title of one of the 5 S-rank magic shooters in Fairy Tail, and also obtained the title of Fairy Queen. She was known as the strongest female magic shooter in Fairy Tail, and was also one of the strongest candidates for a true powerhouse. Thinking of this, Noah felt as if the events of his childhood were still vivid in his mind. One by one they flashed through his mind, causing Noah to be immersed in the memories of his childhood. Unfortunately, this memory did not last for long. Noah! As a surprised voice sounded, the sword lights flashing on the riverbank all disappeared. Noah came back to his senses and looked in front of him. He saw Elisha's 2 night swords turning into rays of light and disappearing into Elisha's hands. Elisha turned her gaze towards Noah and said in surprise, "How strange, you actually came here. What do you mean by that?" Noah shook his head in amusement. He walked forward to the riverbank and looked at the flowing water in the clear river. "This secret base still belonged to me, didn't it? If I didn't want to learn sword skills from you, you wouldn't know this place, right? Why are you saying it as if it's your own? Speaking of which, there seems to be such a thing." Elisha couldn't help but chuckle. She came to Noah's side and stood side by side with Noah, looking forward. "I've been cultivating here all this time. I almost forgot that you were the one who brought me here. I didn't expect you to keep coming here. If it weren't for Mira and Lise Anna telling me, I would still be in the dark." Noah shrugged. "If I told Naz and Gray that you've been cultivating here almost every day, they would definitely understand why you're so strong, right? Don't say that. The 2 of them have been working very hard." Elisha turned her head and said to Noah in confusion, "Now that you mention it, it seems like you haven't been here for a long time." "That's right." Noah sighed as he said this. "After all, if it's just pure training, it's already very difficult for my strength to improve. Now, if I still want to become stronger, blindly training won't work. I need to temper myself in actual combat or life and death battles, or find another way to improve. Naturally, the chances of coming here have decreased, and it's very difficult to come again." "That's true." After hearing Noah's words, Elisha also recalled Noah's outstanding close combat ability and unfathomable strength. She couldn't help but sigh. "You're now indeed above me. When will I reach the level where you can't rely on pure training to become stronger? That will prove that I've more or less caught up to you, right? Don't flatter me. You're already very strong." Noah pursed his lips and sat down on the ground. He placed the box in his hand on the ground. "I brought you a gift of consolation." With that said, Noah opened the box and exposed the thing lying in the box to the air. It was a strawberry cake. Ilusa's eyes lit up, and she immediately sat down on the spot. Without hesitation, she grabbed the cake on the ground, picked up the fork placed in the box and took a bite. Then, she said to Noah in a slightly cheerful tone while savoring the aftertaste, "It's still as delicious as always. Just as delicious as always." Looking at Elisha, who only behaved like a young girl in love when facing her favorite food, Noah couldn't help but smile. "I thought compared to before, the cake shop in Magnolia City has improved a lot in the way of making cakes, and the taste will also improve a lot." Hearing this sentence, Elisha was startled. "Don't tell me you haven't tasted it before? Compared to sweet things, I prefer to have a lighter taste." Noah casually responded. "And just as I said, this is a gift of consolation for you." Elisha took another bite of the cake and held the box containing the cake. Her tone became ethereal. "Really? Eating the cake you brought, I can't help but think of the scene when you first gave me a cake when I was a child. At that time, Elisha had some problems with one of her eyes and used a medical eye patch to cover it. She was a quiet child who only knew how to stay in the corner of the guild and sit quietly by herself. At that time, I had just joined Fairy Tail not long ago. You were the first guild member who interacted with me. Just like now, you gave me a cake." Elisha shifted her gaze and looked at Noah again. "Actually, I always wanted to ask you at that time, why did you want to give me a cake?" Hearing this, Noah went silent. Why did he want to give Elisha a cake and interact with Elisha? Noah did not forget his feelings at that time. "When I first saw you, I knew that you were a person with a lot of stories," Noah said indifferently under Elisha's gaze. "Elisha, in fact, in your heart, there has always been a part that no one can touch, right?" Hearing this, Elisha's expression froze. and the light in her eyes also froze. Such a young child to be able to resist playing with others in such a crowded place. Either you are afraid of strangers, or you must have a reason to do so, Noah said as if he did not notice Alusha's change. But no matter how I look at you, you don't look like someone who is afraid of strangers, so I think you must have a past that you can't talk about, and it is definitely not a good past. Is that so? The expression on Alusha's face disappeared, and the gaze she looked at Noah became uncertain. So, at that time did you do that because you sympathized with me? Sympathized? Noah laughed and shook his head. It would be good if it was sympathy, but unfortunately at that time the only feeling I had was envy. Envy? Even Alusha was stunned when she heard this. Envy? Envy that she was alone? Envy that she had a bad past? Was this something to be envious of? If it was someone else who said this, Alusha would definitely think that the other party was mocking her, but Noah was not that kind of person. Then what did this sentence mean? Even if you have a bad past, a painful past, or even a desperate past, it is still a past that belongs to you. As if Noah saw through Alusha's thoughts, his expression became complicated. Having a past that can prove your existence, isn't it worth being envious? Alusha was stunned, and immediately seemed to have thought of something. She fell into silence, unable to speak. Chapter 392. In Fairy Tale, very few people knew anything about Noah before he joined the guild. Now in Fairy Tale, except for the old members who had existed before Noah joined Fairy Tale, the rest of the members thought that Noah was Makarov's grandson. Only the old members knew that Noah was adopted by Makarov. However, even the old members only knew that Noah was an orphan who was adopted by Makarov after meeting him by chance. They did not know why Makarov adopted Noah. After all, Fairy Tale had always accepted many orphans from all over the world. People like Alusha, Naz, Gray, Mira, Lisanna, and Elfman had all joined the guild when they were young, but none of them had been adopted by Makarov. Then why did Makarov only adopt Noah as his grandson? As a childhood friend who grew up with Noah, Alusha naturally knew the reason. It was because Noah did not go there. According to Makarov, Noah seemed to have appeared in this world out of thin air. There was no trace of him living, existing, or leaving behind any traces, and no memory of anything before the age of 10. In Noah's memory, the first scene was when he met Makarov in the nameless forest. After meeting Noah, because of Noah's memory loss, Makarov did not hesitate to ask around about Noah's background. He helped Noah search for possible relatives and hometown, but the final conclusion was that Noah seemed to have appeared out of thin air. There was no trace of him ever existing. Under such circumstances, Makarov could not sit by and watch Noah, who did not even know who his biological parents were, appear in this world as if he had never existed. Therefore, he resolutely accepted Noah as his adopted grandson, hoping to bring him some familial warmth. To be honest, Alusha could not imagine how Noah felt when he had just joined Fairy Tale. He had no memories of his past, and he knew that he did not have any place in this world where he could or had ever existed. That kind of emptiness, blankness made Alusha shudder when she thought about it. Once Alusha also had such thoughts. How good would it be if she could forget the past? But now that she thought about it carefully, was it really good to not have a past? Just like what Noah said, even if the past was bad, painful, or even desperate, it was proof of her existence. Compared to this, a life without a past, without any evidence of existence, that was the real horror. Fortunately, Noah met Makarov and joined Fairy Tale. He had a place that could prove his existence. Otherwise, Alusha felt that at that time Noah, who had nothing in the real sense, would definitely be living a life worse than death. It would be like being in hell. I know that you may be very angry when I say this, but at that time I really envied you. Noah laughed bitterly. Then when I came to my senses, I had already unknowingly developed the idea of getting close to you. Everything that happened after that happened naturally. I'm sorry, Alusha said in a low tone. I reminded you of the bad past. We're the same, right? Noah sighed slightly. Am I not the same? I reminded you of the bad past? But I'm really grateful to you. Alusha's tone became sincere again. If it weren't for your share of the cake, perhaps there would never be today's Alusha Chocolito. You are the third person in this life to save me. The third. Noah looked at Alusha in surprise. Have you been saved by so many people? Yes, without you, I would have disappeared long ago. Elisha laughed self-deprecatingly. Because of Grandpa Luobu's rescue, I survived the hands of a group of demons. Because of your rescue, I have a new life and… Perhaps even Elisha herself did not realize. Elisha's hands had long been clenched tightly, and even a touch of pain appeared on her face. And… Jalal. These words were uttered in an inarticulate accent that bordered on the utterance of a dream. However, Noah heard it clearly. He heard it clearly. Therefore, when the name Jalal drilled into Noah's ears, Noah's heart suddenly tightened, and his hand subconsciously reached for his pocket. In that pocket was lying the paper with the address of the Paradise Tower written on it. At this moment, Noah finally confirmed his previous guess. Sure enough, Elisha and Jalal had an extraordinary relationship with the Paradise Tower. That was the corner of Elisha's heart that no one had been able to touch, a secret that even Noah had no way to know. Since childhood, Noah knew that Elisha's heart must be hiding an extraordinary secret. Now, Noah had finally touched the tip of the iceberg of this secret. Don't think about the bad memories anymore. As his heart began to become active, Noah looked at Elisha, who had a somewhat painful expression on her face, and changed the topic. Although that's also proof of your existence, if one doesn't look forward, there's no way to move forward. You won't be able to move forward and you might even fall back. That's not the Elisha I know. Elisha lowered her head, and in the next second raised it up again, regaining her previous heroic spirit. Is that so? That's true. With that said, Elisha suddenly leaned her head on Noah's shoulder, and her armored hand tightly hugged one of Noah's arms. Just a little, let me lean on you. Noah, who was a little surprised that the always strong Elisha suddenly showed such a weak behavior, slowly relaxed his expression and body. He also raised his other hand and gently stroked Elisha's head, just like coaxing a child to sleep. No matter when, if you want to borrow it, I will lend it to you. So please don't be shy and lean on me. After all, we grew up together since childhood, and no one can replace family. Hearing Noah's words, Elisha's slightly cold heart gradually warmed up, and a touch of peace and comfort appeared on her delicate face. She closed her eyes as if falling into a deep sleep, and didn't speak for a long time. Under the setting sun, a man and a woman leaned on each other by the clear river bank until the sun went down, and it was still the same as before. Of course, Elisha didn't know. At this moment, Noah secretly made a decision. In the living room of the Strauss siblings' home, Lise Anna suddenly stood up and looked at Noah with a face full of anxiety. Big brother Noah, you're leaving again. Noah. Myra's gentle expression, which had always been gentle to Noah, dimmed. She seemed to have suffered a blow like Lise Anna. Seeing this, Noah knew that Myra and Lise Anna had misunderstood. Don't worry, I'm not going to cultivate this time. It's just that there's something I want to do, and there's a place I want to go to, Noah hurriedly said. If there are no accidents, I'll be back in about 10 days or a month at most. It's very likely that I'll be back in 2 or 3 days. I won't be leaving for that long. Hearing this, Myra and Lisanna's expressions brightened, and they breathed a sigh of relief. Are you going to work? Lisanna asked. Can I go with you? No need, I'll be fine by myself. Noah scratched his cheek. I'm not going to work, I just have something to do. Don't worry. Seeing that the two sisters were still a little worried, Noah comforted them. Don't forget, even if you're worried about me, I have Bio by my side. Nothing will happen. Then do you need me to prepare anything for you? Myra asked considerately. You don't have any money on you, right? What about the travel expenses? Noah was speechless. Let me and big sister Myra prepare the necessities for your trip. Lise Anna smiled mischievously. We'll also prepare the travel expenses for big brother Noah. Don't worry. Noah could only laugh dryly, speechless. This time he really was suspected of living off a woman. Chapter 393. Walala. The waves rolled back and forth in dazzling ripples, surging into the distance. There was an endless ocean here. Above the ocean, a stream of light flew across the ocean at an extremely fast speed like a meteor in the daytime. With a sharp whistling sound, it disappeared in the space. It didn't take long before it disappeared into the horizon, and appeared in another place. With the help of the death feather form of the magician and speed none, Noah was flying towards the distant ocean at a speed that ordinary ships couldn't compare to. At this time Noah, who was flying over the ocean, was holding a map in his hand. There was an extremely obvious X symbol on the corner of the map. That X symbol was Noah's destination this time, Paradise Tower. To be honest, Noah didn't want to delve too deeply into Alicia's past. After all, everyone had secrets that they didn't want to tell others. However, this time Noah intuitively felt that he was very concerned. Otherwise, he wouldn't have specifically asked about Mr. Gang. Knowing that the reason he was so concerned about Paradise Tower was mostly because of Alicia, coupled with his conversation with Alicia yesterday, Noah finally decided to take the initiative to investigate Paradise Tower. Of course, investigating Paradise Tower was one thing. More importantly, Noah wanted to see that so-called Jalal. To be able to attract so much attention from Mr. Gang, and look exactly like Mr. Gang and Zeke, and to be able to make Alicia show such a painful expression, Noah felt that this Jalal must be the key to everything. Therefore, even if it was for Alicia, Noah had to investigate this so-called Paradise Tower. Using his memory, Noah identified the map in his hand and kept flying forward. After an unknown amount of time, he suddenly stopped and floated in midair. It's this area. After confirming the location recorded on the map in his hand, Noah raised his head and looked around. After a second, he fixed his gaze on one of the locations. There was an island there. No, rather than an island, it was more like a tower. It was like a tower that grew from the bottom of the sea. It was also like a towering tree that stood on the sea for a long time. Looking at the strangely shaped tower, Noah squinted his eyes. After crushing the map in his hand, his body spun. Pung! Dense black light gushed out from the death feather form of the magician, and turned into a solid thrust. Noah's figure once again turned into a meteor and swept towards the ominous tower that seemed to be under dark clouds. Dong 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 dong! Amidst the sounds of footsteps that were enough to cause the ground to tremble, many huge black shadows ran back and forth in the corridors as if they were patrolling, lingering in every corner. Noah poked his head out from a dark corner. Looking at the huge shadows, he frowned slightly. The bodies of the huge shadows were ferocious beasts with wings like ferocious beasts. On the backs of these beasts, there were soldiers wearing standard equipment and holding long spears. They were riding on the beasts and patrolling back and forth in the corridors. The security was quite strict. Originally, Noah thought that the security of this island built on the sea would not be too strict. Who knew that even if it was built in an unknown corner of the sea, the interior of the tower would still be so heavily guarded. However, this also proved that there was definitely something shameful or extremely important in this tower. Otherwise, in such a corner of the sea that was unlikely to be found, this tower that was difficult to find with a natural barrier did not need to be so heavily guarded. Noah, who was hiding in the dark, pondered for a while and decided to take action. Here, there were also some soldiers who were not riding on the beasts to patrol. When such a soldier passed by Noah's position, Noah suddenly flew out and silently appeared behind him. Pa-dash! In a crisp sound, Noah's hand chopped cleanly on the soldier's neck. Goo-dash! The soldier only felt a pain on his back and his vision blurred. He immediately lost all consciousness. Noah directly dragged the soldier who was knocked out by him into the corner. When Noah came out of the corner again, Noah had already changed into the standard equipment of the soldier. His whole body was wrapped tightly and he was holding a long spear. In this case, even if Alicia came, as long as she didn't have Naz's keen sense of smell, it would be difficult to find out that it was Noah himself. Just as Noah was thinking about what to do next, a voice called him from behind. Hey, it's time to gather. Hurry up and come here. With that said, a soldier wearing the same standard equipment as Noah came over and rudely poked Noah with the end of the long spear in his hand. Sir Jalal is going to give a speech at the venue. Everyone has to gather there. Don't tell me you forgot? Hearing this, Noah raised his eyebrows. Jalal is going to give a speech? No, I didn't forget. Noah pretended to shake his head in panic. I just want to go there too. Then hurry up. The soldier didn't wait for Noah and directly walked forward. If you're late later, then you'll be in trouble. Even if Sir Jalal is not as cruel as those hateful magic church, he will still punish those who don't follow the rules. If you don't want to eat, then continue to dawdle here. Immediately. Noah deliberately pretended to be frightened, but his mind was extremely calm. His body followed behind the running soldier and ran forward. This was a square at the bottom of the Paradise Tower. The surroundings were all made of rough stones. Even the floor and ceiling were made of stone bricks that were falling down. In such a place, all the soldiers wearing standard equipment were gathered here. The soldiers didn't line up in any sort of formation. They just stood there casually, but all of them raised their spears high up in the air and shouted loudly, "Sir Jalal! Sir Jalal!" Noah blended into the crowd and imitated the people around him as he raised the spear in his hand. He raised his head and looked forward. There wasn't any luxurious platform here. However, in front of the square, there was a stone staircase that extended upward, like a snake coiling in the tower. It wasn't spectacular, but the construction was quite grand. On a protruding platform above the stone staircase, there were several figures standing there. They were completely different from the soldiers in the square wearing casual clothes. It was a tall and sturdy man with an iron shield covering his mouth and chin. Her hair was like a cat's ears, and her appearance and behavior were reminiscent of a cat girl. Her body was like a toy with edges and corners. Even her head was a strange man made of square blocks. There was also a handsome young man with slightly dark skin who looked the most like a normal person. In the middle of these four people, there was a figure with a strong presence, but his entire body was emitting an evil aura. Noah fixed his gaze on that person, a glint flashing in his eyes. All it took was a split second for Noah to recognize the man. This was because he had the exact same appearance and build as Mr. Gang and Kieran. Other than that so-called Jalal, who else could it be? Looking at the figure that was exactly the same as Mr. Gang and Kieran, Noah shook his head. If it wasn't for the evil aura on him, Noah would have suspected that he was Mr. Gang or Kieran in disguise. They were too similar. There were a total of 3 people with this appearance, so how could Noah not be suspicious? Under such circumstances, Jalal stepped forward and reached out his hand as if he intended to embrace the world. "Comrades, rejoice!" Jalal shouted at the soldiers in the square in an impassioned tone. "Our dreams. We spent 8 years to build this Paradise Tower. Today, it's finally done." Suddenly, the entire place fell silent. Oh! The next moment, astonishing cheers resounded throughout the entire arena. Chapter 394. Oh! In the entire square, all the soldiers seemed to have gone crazy all of a sudden. Like fanatics, they raised the spears in their hands and roared wildly in cheers. Despite the cheers, Jalal's voice still reverberated clearly in the air and drilled into everyone's ears. "My fellow citizens, do you still remember who the previous owner of this pagoda was?" His words made everyone's cheers stop abruptly. Noah was also shocked. He focused his attention and began to pay attention to Jalal's words. "That's right. I believe none of you will ever forget those cruel, inhumane demons who used us as slaves." Jalal clenched his fists and said in an impassioned voice, "Those guys were originally from the magic order that believed in black magic. In order to build this tower, they captured us from all over the world and made us work for them. We worked hard, but they didn't let us eat. They are the most unforgivable people in the world. However, we should rejoice that not only have we been liberated from those bastards, we have also obtained the ownership of this tower in our resistance." Jalal waved his hand vigorously like a fanatic trying to stir up the hearts of the people. 8 years have passed. Finally, we have built this Paradise Tower. It will lead us to the Paradise Tower in front of us, allowing us to obtain true freedom. Let's show those bastards who took away our freedom what we have accomplished. Jalal shouted. "Comrades, let us use this tower together. Use this magic called our system. Resurrect the great man who can lead us to the paradise of light and freedom." Jerf. Oh, the cheers were even more shocking than before. It was so loud that it caused the air to tremble. It turned into sound waves that spread in all directions. In the crowd, Noah's expression changed as his heart trembled. Although Jalal's words seemed to be fanning the zeal of the soldiers present, Noah also obtained a few pieces of information from it. Firstly, the ruler of this Paradise Tower was not Jalal, but a magic order that believed in black magic. However, it was overthrown by the people here, and now Jalal was ruling this tower. Secondly, the true face of this Paradise Tower was a forbidden magic called our system. Noah had read about this in a book before. It was said that our system was a magic that could use the living as a sacrifice to resurrect the dead. In this world, magic that could distort life as it wished was the most forbidden existence. Therefore, those who studied our system were all a legal magic order that believed in black magic. They were the real evildoers. Because this kind of magic was too forbidden, as soon as it was discovered, the council would definitely send troops to eradicate it. Therefore, as far as Noah knew, all our system should have been suppressed by the council as early as 7 years ago, and disappeared in the long river of history. But now this dangerous forbidden magic taboo appeared once again. Moreover, it was this paradise tower that had a close relationship with Alusha. Of course, this was not enough to surprise Noah. What really surprised Noah was no doubt the name that Jalal had just mentioned, Jerf, the most violent, evil and powerful black magician in the history of the magic world, who only existed in legends. The ancestor of the black magicians who raised black magic to the extreme, created countless black magic and demons, plunged the world into chaos, and had the almost invincible power to destroy the world, the legendary villain. Jalal was actually planning to use our system to resurrect the most evil black magician in history. If this news were to spread, it would probably cause a panic in the entire magic world, and make the Magic Council and all the black magicians on the continent scared out of their wits. How could Alusha have anything to do with such a dangerous thing? Thinking of this, Noah remembered what Jalal had just said. The previous rulers of this paradise tower were a group of magic orders who believed in black magic. They captured people from all over the world and made them work as coolies to build our system. Could it be that before Elusa joined Fairy Tale, she was captured by the magic order and brought here as a slave to do manual labor like the rest of the people here? In this case, it would explain why Alusha's past was related to the paradise tower, and why she knew Jalal and had an unbearable past. But in this case, how did Alusha leave here and join Fairy Tale? Noah felt that he had touched on a corner of the truth. From now on, the paradise tower will enter a state of full alert. After completing the instigation, Jalal began to give orders. We are about to succeed, and we are about to gain real freedom and become the residents of paradise. We must not make any mistakes at this most critical moment. So, my compatriots, pick up the weapons in your hands, defend our ideals and protect this tower. Lord Jalal! Lord Jalal! Lord Jalal! Lord Jalal! The soldiers shouted the name of the ruler of the paradise tower in an orderly manner as if they were on a pilgrimage. The fanaticism in their hearts had already been aroused by Jalal's few words. Even if the people here were to die now, there would be many people who would be willing to rush forward. Unfortunately, no one noticed that an outsider had already mixed in with them. Noah looked at Jalal, who walked up the stone stairs with 4 bodyguards and disappeared from the square. He quietly retreated, hid his figure, and soon disappeared into the crowd. It's finally done. In the dim passage, the dark-skinned boy said excitedly, our ideals are finally about to be completed, and real freedom is about to fall into our hands. Don't be happy too early, Zio, the burly man said in a deep voice. Right now, the R system has not been successfully launched, and we still need to prepare a lot of things. Let's wait until it's done before we celebrate. Well, what's wrong with that? The vitality is the strongest, the cat-like girl said cheerfully. Simon, you're too serious. You should be more energetic. No. Only Miljana can be so energetic at this time. The square-faced man struck an exaggerated pose as if he was acting. You should be more nervous at this time. That's right. Just like when the main character in a movie is about to duel with the boss, what we need is not energy but handsomeness, girl. We don't need that kind of thing, the boy named Zio said anxiously to the square-faced man. Wooly, is Jalal really ready to launch the R system? The construction of the Paradise Tower has been completed, and it can be activated at any time. All that's left is the sacrifice. The one who answered Zio was not the square-faced man named Wooly, but the burly Simon. Originally, to revive a great person like Jerf, we need a lot of live sacrifices, but Jalal said that he doesn't want to do such cruel things like the magic church, so we just need to prepare a special sacrifice. A special sacrifice? Miljana tilted her head. What is it? Is it a cat? A cat won't do. Hi, girl. No matter how I think about it, it can't be a cat, right? Willie tapped his forehead with his finger and lowered his head, making a handsome pose. I heard that it requires someone with magic power and a body comparable to the 10 great Saint Magisters as a sacrifice. That's right. Jalal already has a candidate in mind. Simon's voice became even deeper. This person is Elisha. When this name came out of Simon's mouth, the 4 people present all stopped in their tracks, and the atmosphere around them changed completely. Elisha. Zio's face was gloomy as she let out a creepy laugh. What a nostalgic name. Unfortunately, it's also easy to awaken the hatred in my heart. What should we do? Miljana asked timidly. Are we going to find little Elu? Just as she said that, a voice sounded from the tunnel where Zio, Simon, Wooly, and Miljana were. About this matter, please explain it to me properly. Chapter 395. About this matter, please explain it to me clearly. Zio, Simon, Wooly, and Miljana, who were still immersed in the heavy atmosphere of memories, were suddenly shocked. Their bodies tensed up almost reflexively, and they got into a fighting stance. A few poker cards appeared in Zio's hand. Simon clenched his fist like a judo master and lowered his body. One of Wooly's hands changed shape like a toy and turned into a gun muzzle. Miljana, on the other hand, was like a cat. Her hands formed into claws and she bared her teeth. Who? Under the vigilant gazes of the 4 people, Noah, who was still wearing the standard equipment of the soldiers of the Paradise Tower, took off the mask on his face and revealed his appearance from the shadows of the tunnel in front of them. He walked out step by step. His dark and deep eyes were rippling with a cold light that was hard to detect as he looked ahead. It doesn't matter who I am. What matters is whether what you said just now is true. What we said just now. Zio, Simon, Wooly, and Miljana were slightly stunned. If I didn't hear wrongly, you said that Jalal asked you to prepare the sacrifice to activate the R system. Right? Noah suddenly smiled, but there was no smile in his eyes. And this sacrifice is Elisha. Am I right? You. Simon said solemnly. Do you know Elisha? This name seemed to have an extraordinary meaning to Zio, Simon, Wooly, and Miljana. At the mention of this name, not to mention Simon, even Zio, Wooly, and Miljana's expressions turned gloomy. This surprised Noah more or less. Originally, Noah thought that the only person in this Paradise Tower who was related to Elisha was Jalal. Now, it seemed that the 4 people in front of him had an unusual relationship with Elisha. However, from the moment they casually said that Elisha was a sacrifice, Noah didn't think that they were Elisha's companions. Even if he was in the past, he definitely didn't have that right now. It seems that Jalal is serious. Noah laughed, but even the 4 people present could hear the coldness in his laughter, and they couldn't help but feel a chill in their hearts. Very well. Anyway, the investigation of the Paradise Tower is almost complete. There's no need to be secretive. Since you intend to target Elisha, I don't need to show any mercy. As soon as he finished speaking, a wave of mana gushed out from Noah's shoulder. It was as if it had turned into a vortex that hovered and gathered, forming an intricate geometric pattern. Buzz! Every precise geometric design resembled the muzzle of a laser cannon, and a large amount of mana gathered inside each magic array, causing each magic array to flash with a dazzling light. No! Simon, who had the keenest senses, widened his eyes and roared. Be careful! He only had time to say these words before the intricate geometric magic arrays suspended above Noah trembled, and a dazzling light burst out. Then, like a tide, magic cannons burst out from the intricate geometric magic arrays, and flooded the entire passage. Boom! When that astonishing loud noise resounded from the Paradise Tower, on the surface of the sea, the corner of the Paradise Tower that stood there like a towering tree seemed to have undergone a shocking explosion. A burst of light burst out, stirring up a burst of thick smoke that rose into the sky. In a dim room on the top floor of the Paradise Tower, Jalal, who was sitting on a throne-like seat, frowned slightly and listened attentively to the loud sound that resounded throughout the entire Paradise Tower. Hearing the loud sound, Jalal raised his brows and turned his head to look at a shelf next to the armrest of his seat. There was a crystal ball placed there. To be precise, it was a magic crystal. Reaching out his hand, Jalal gently stroked the surface of the crystal ball. A surge of mana flowed into the crystal ball, causing it to flash with a solitary light. A moment later, an image was projected on the crystal ball. It was the image of Noah standing in a passage filled with thick smoke and flames with intricate geometric magic arrays suspended above his head. Oh! Seeing this scene, especially when he saw Noah's appearance, Jalal's eyes glowed and he smiled. Why is he here? Jalal actually knew Noah. Interesting. It just so happens that the Paradise Tower is completed. To celebrate Gerald's rebirth, let's play a little game. After saying this, Jalal turned his gaze to the front and revealed a sinister smile. I wanted to hire an assassin guild to work for me, but I didn't expect to be infiltrated before I even started. I hope Simon and the others can play with him for a while. Huff! Thick smoke and flames mixed with strong shockwaves permeated the entire passageway, filling every corner in an instant. With the intricate geometric magic arrays suspended above his head, the area within 2 meters around Noah seemed to have fallen into a vacuum zone. The smoke and flames in the surroundings seemed to be deliberately avoiding Noah's position and automatically parted to the sides. The person who caused all this to happen narrowed his eyes and looked at the center of the smoke and flames in front of him. He said half jokingly, half seriously, "This is really surprising. I thought that this attack would at least have some effect. I didn't expect that it actually didn't hurt you at all. What a strange magic." After saying that, Noah waved his hand, and a gust of wind formed out of thin air and blew away the smoke and flames in front of Noah, exposing the scene inside to the air. In the middle of a huge pit, there were a few poker cards that reflected the lonely light like mirrors lying there quietly. Upon a closer look, Zio, Simon, Wooly, and Miliana seemed to have entered the poker cards. Their figures became smaller than the poker cards and were reflected on the mirror-like surface. Gotcha! However, in the next second, a cracking sound was heard, and the surface of the cards with the 4 of them on them cracked open. Boom! The next moment, the poker cards exploded like glass. Zio, Simon, Wooly, and Miliana appeared in the pit out of thin air. They were either kneeling on one knee or lying on the ground, looking at Noah in horror. Zio in particular seemed to have expended a lot of energy. She collapsed on the ground, panting rapidly with a face full of exhaustion. Just now it was Zio who had used magic to seal Simon, Wooly, Miliana, and herself in the poker cards, allowing them to escape Noah's attack. Zio! Miliana hurriedly supported Zio with a worried expression. You! Simon and Wooly went forward at the same time and stood in front of Zio and Miliana to protect them. They looked at Noah angrily. Who exactly are you? Do you want to know? Noah glanced at Simon and Wooly. All you need to know is that I'm Elisha's companion. Elisha's companion? Wooly was stunned. Elisha's companion? Simon was also taken aback, but a thoughtful glint flashed in his eyes. Little Elu's companion? Miliana cried out in surprise. Why would little Elu's companion appear here? Companion? Zio's face was a little pale as she broke out in a cold sweat. However, she cast her gaze at Noah and said in a mocking tone, "That sister who betrayed us actually has a new companion. It's really as Jalal said. She has long forgotten about us." Noah, who didn't want to say too much to Simon and company, couldn't ignore this sentence. His sharp eyes focused directly on Zio. What do you mean by that? Tell me clearly. Isn't it clear enough? Zio didn't look timid at all under Noah's sharp gaze. Instead, she shouted even more agitatedly. Then I'll tell you. Elisha Shikalito is a traitor who once betrayed us. A traitor who betrayed her companions. Elisha betrayed her companions. Noah stared at Zio's agitated face. When he realized that she didn't seem to be lying, he frowned deeply. Elisha betrayed her companions? Is this possible?